Greetings, esteemed viewers! I am the Pontius. Those that are returning fans and subscribers already know me pretty well, but this little introduction is for the many people that in fact do not know me, and are here because they found this video specifically. Oh yeah, there is also my co-host, Pio. Say hi, Pio.
Hey, how you doing?
And that's enough of Pio. If it wasn't obvious from my extremely thick accent, I am Italian, and so are all other members of the channel, so I hope you won't have a problem understanding me during this video. In case, my apologies, I am doing my best. But let's get to business. This video will already be decently complicated as is. As you will have understood when you clicked on this video, I am a 40k lore master. I discovered Warhammer 40k in 2019 while I was still a university student that couldn't speak 2 words of English together. It fascinated me so much as a concept that it drove me to learn English in my spare time by myself. And in 6 months I was already a European C2 level in the English language. Learning it for Warhammer 40k specifically. And to be honest, learning it through 40k, by watching lore videos in English and reading the wikis and lexicanum in English. As you can see from the videos published on our YouTube channel, you are dealing with a YouTuber making mainly long-form content on 40k lore subjects that are obscure, or even unheard of for many people. I'm talking with you specifically, Cacodominus. Our videos have been praised by many for extreme lore accuracy, smart humor, but especially for the theories we have formulated in the years. To be honest, the videos I am the most proud of in the entire channel are the Bad War series videos. We covered the entire war beginning to end in 4 parts, and in the 5th part we offered an answer as to why Luft Euron went mad and started the events that would lead to the war itself. We have given an answer to the mystery of the missing Primarchs, offered an alternative and to be honest better structured lore to explain the creation of the Primaris Marines. Recently we discovered the true origins of the Emperor of Mankind, of humanity as a species, as well as our purpose in the 40k galaxy, as well as the purpose of the Emperor as a living being. We have done enough investigative research to put to bed once and for all the discussion on female Space Marines. And I mean it. We ended up contacting former employees of Games Workshop that were there when 40k was created to ask for explanations. As you can understand from this little presentation, I am proud of the work we have done and we do. But I am not making this introduction for everyone just to brag about our videos. This introduction to this video has a very specific reason to exist. All that I have explained until now serves one single purpose. Making you understand from the beginning, before you even watch the video, that I know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. And before you leave an angry comment under the video, keep in mind that Luetin is not on the cover for lore accuracy, but for another big problem that in my opinion discredits much of his own work. So, we'll get to him, just wait until then.
In fact I was wondering why he was in the middle of a bunch of inaccurate lore channels.
I won't waste time in this video to thank people, they already know how appreciated they are anyway. But there is a little backstory to give as to why this video is being made. Now, for the people that hanged around the channel for a while, they will either have seen my post about a series called Lore Destroyers, or the recent first episode containing some of the best moments of it. Lore Destroyers is a series of videos, in long form and unedited, that is entirely contained to the Patreon of the YouTube channel. It is very simple in concept. Me and Pio, and usually even our narrator, meet up once a week with the members of the Patreon and watch videos that the Patreons themselves have sent in for us to watch. Usually lore videos by either big or small creators, with either good or bad opinions, or good or bad levels of lore accuracy. We are pretty much lore reviewers for the members of the Patreon. Now that I explained that, I want everyone to know that this video was made because of the Lore Destroyer series. The Patreon at the time of this video has 15 episodes published, and there is a common theme in all of them. The quality of both big and small YouTubers that we are asked to review for lore accuracy is, to put it simply, abysmal. The bar of lore accuracy for everything that we have watched for the Patreon until now is so low that by this point it is sleeping with the corpse of Barabbas D'Antioch.
Again, we are not counting Luetin in this, he's in the video for another reason.
And now, not only we will spend our time to show you how inaccurate and wrong some of these YouTubers are, even if, trust me, some in my opinion are deliberately lying about the lore to push their own political agenda, but we will put to bed a lot of myths that many of these same YouTubers are perpetrated over the years. Now, keep in mind before we start, I don't consider myself the only expert on Warhammer 40k on YouTube or in life in general. Very far from that. I am an expert, Pio is an expert, many other people are experts. In fact, there is many in our Discord that I consider on our same level of knowledge when it comes to 40k. This just before somebody thinks this video is made out of arrogance. No, it isn't. I don't even dislike many of the YouTubers that we will talk about today, but I feel that as sources of information, and I am speaking of all of us, we have a duty to be as impartial and as precise and correct as humanly possible. So, know that the standards I am applying to all of the people that will be featured in this video, I am also applying to myself, and I expect that you will apply them to me in the same way. It is why in every single one of our lore videos, we feature the sources used for the video in the description, so that if you think we are wrong, you know exactly where we looked for the lore we explained in the video. And to make how I feel as clear as possible, I took a clip from a video of Louis Rossmann that explains it in the perfect way.
But I don't want you to get the idea that I expect you to trust me. I want you to apply the same standard to me that I'm asking you to apply to everybody else, even the people that are telling you what you want to hear. Always demand information, always demand primary sources, always demand proof, and if they can't provide it, stop listening to them, even if what they're saying supports the way that you see the world and your pre-existing biases.
So, now that everything is clear, we can start. And where to start if not with some of the biggest creators of Warhammer 40k? We will start with Weshammer. Now, for reference, for the Lord Destroyers episode where we watched Weshammer, we were sent very old videos coming from his TikTok, where he talked about how the retcon of female space marines, if it happened, wouldn't really matter, how he didn't care one way or another, and where he used objectively stupid examples to try and justify it.
But the lore changes all the time, and a lot of the new stuff is pretty good. My perspective in the universe of the Grimdark, where there's nothing but war, enemies on all sides, the Imperium is constantly strapped for resources. From my perspective, anybody that can hold a gun, men, women, children, doesn't matter, you're on the front line. If it happens, awesome, I'm on board. If it doesn't, whatever. I understand the people who want their Space Marines to remain a sausage party. I honestly get the appeal of the brotherhood of Space Marines. But if you use the lore as an argument against them, why aren't you doing rants against the Primaris? Or Gilliman being resurrected? Dreadnoughts that can be piloted by a living host? Or literally anything involving call. So if you didn't know, the idea of female Space Marines is pretty controversial in the 40k community. A lot of the lore purists out there point to the Sisters of Battle saying we don't need female Space Marines, we've got sisters. But let's be real. The sisters are awesome, I love them. But they have nowhere near the diversity or the attention paid to them by Games Workshop as the Space Marines do. The Space Marines have tons of different legions and tons of different lore, and no matter who you are, you can find a Space Marine legion that resonates with you. Because they're all super different. The sisters, not so much. Lore purists like to say that there's no reason for them to exist from the lore's perspective. But my man Fabby Spile right here has been creating a whole new race of people that are genetically superior to Space Marines. And the women in it are super badass and even stronger than the males. He also was quoted as saying, "I will never understand the Emperor's decision to bestow his gifts on only one half of the human population." It was hinted at in his most recent book that he's working on a Chaos equivalent to Primaris. So Chaos might actually be getting female Space Marines first, proving once again Chaos is far more inclusive than the Imperium. Personally, I want to see women represented in the Space Marine legions. But I get it if you want your Space Marines to just be beefcakes all the time. I just want my legion to be an armor-clad sausage party. Jokes aside, I genuinely understand. I get the attraction to the fraternity. I understand all the memes about brothers. What I truly don't understand, though, is the argument that it goes against the lore. Because the game's been around for 30 years. The lore's changing all the time. Some of it for the better, some of it for the worse. Backgrounds created tyrannus, that's ridiculous. But if your argument against them is only because of the lore, why don't you have a problem with the Primaris Marine? Because they go against the lore too. They were created by Call, not the Emperor. And tinkering with the Emperor's designs is heresy. You don't have a problem with these things, or Gilliman coming back, or the Eldar gods, or Space Marines having friggin' grab tanks. And don't get me wrong, I've met people that have a problem with all these things. It seems like the loudest voices are just complaining about women Space Marines. Number one, he's right. I've been wrong before. I'm a huge Warhammer fan, but I'm not an expert. I've read all the codexes for multiple editions. I've read like 85 of the books. But there's over 600, so I'm still learning new stuff every day. And when I find out new information, I either make an update video or correct myself in the comments. TikTok won't let me edit a video that's already been posted, though.
But by word of mouth, long before even thinking of this video, I heard that Weshammer has made a promise to be more accurate canonically and explore and explain the universe better when it comes to lore and canon. Because of that, me and Pio decided to go and watch his video on the retcon of the Terminus Decree. And I must say, he might be a bit better at explaining the lore and being just slightly more accurate than he was in the past, but I couldn't help but notice that he has some of the worst approaches to lore I've ever seen in my entire life. This entire video was nothing but trying to find an excuse for the lazy and, to be honest, very shitty writing of Games Workshop.
If I set all of my biases aside, and I'm being extremely generous, the research notes from Basileau Foe and the Anti-Astartes bioweapon is technically never explicitly said to be what the Terminus Decree is. It's all just heavily implied, with an admittedly extremely on-the-nose heavy hand. If Games Workshop was to come out and say that that was all just a misdirection, don't worry, the bioweapon, the research notes, that's all still canon, that's being held somewhere on Titan, but we never technically said that's what the Terminus Decree was, and don't worry, here in 10th edition, we're finally telling you what it actually is. As much as I hate to do it, fine. For the sake of the argument, in this moment, I'll buy into that and give them the benefit of the doubt. That maybe this really had been what Games Workshop was planning for the Terminus Decree for over a decade. Maybe this really isn't a retcon. Full disclosure, I don't believe that for a second, but alright, let's go with it.
Now, don't get me wrong, many times Weshammer said in the video that he was being the devil's advocate. But at the same time, I don't see him pointing the blame directly against Workshop for how many times they have fucked up the lore in the last few years. The Primaris, Female Custodes, the Terminus Decree, the lore about the aspirants of the Grey Knights. Because in the same codex where the retcon happened about the Terminus Decree, there is another piece of lore that explains how because of the Cicatrix Maledictum, the recruits of the Grey Knights have thinned out. They don't have as many, and because of that they are, and I'm quoting the codex here, attacking Imperial institutions and other Space Marine chapters to steal their aspirants and psychically sensitive recruits, to then hide evidence of their own actions. I hope I don't have to explain how dumb this retcon is. This is Badab war level heresy. If anything like this canonically happened, so many people would openly go against the Grey Knights that they would end up annihilated. And even then, do you want to know why this retcon makes no sense whatsoever? Because of the entire story of the Psychic Awakening. Because of the Cicatrix Maledictum, the quantity of human-born Psykers in the Imperium of Men has grown considerably. So even if the galaxy is cut in half, the Grey Knights should either feel just a slight drop in recruits, or no difference whatsoever. At least not on the level to have to attack other Space Marine chapters to steal their psychic recruits. Which I would argue wouldn't even be that many. The chapters of Space Marines don't recruit Psykers specifically. The newly inducted initiates are introduced in the Librarium if they show potential. But the chances that it happens at all are minimum on a good day. And there is zero guarantee that these aspirants will even be compatible with Grey Knight's gene seed. They were screened for compatibility with their original chapter of recruitment, not them. So canonically the Grey Knights are probably killing dozens of Space Marines, best case scenario, to steal 1 or 2 recruits from every attack. And those recruits have even a minimal chance to survive the basic induction on Titan. I hope I don't have to explain more to make you understand how fucking nonsensical all of this is. And this has been happening for years. If Weshammer thought that this retcon was the only bad one, I must wonder how active he is lore-wise. In this same video, Weshammer talks about how instead we should give props to Games Workshop. Because keeping straight the lore of the 40k universe is no easy task, and they have done at least a good job with it. And I'm quoting Weshammer here.
I'm well aware that here on the internet, when you're talking about Warhammer, the safest opinion to have is always going to be the one that criticizes Games Workshop. The YouTube algorithm loves outrage more than it does thoughtful critique. But normally, I'm not that kind of guy. I always like to give credit where it's due. And the truth is, GW doesn't get enough credit for how consistent they usually are. Yes, sloppy retcons happen, but when you compare their missteps to the sheer mountain of lore 40k has built over the decades, I'd argue they handle the continuity better than almost any other franchise of this size. Look at the big comic book universes, for example. There's constant retcons, collapsing timelines, reboots every few years, alternate dimensions, and far too many time travel resets. 40k never did that. Sure, it can be a convoluted, impenetrable mess at times, but it never threw up its hands and said, well, we lost the plot. None of this is canon anymore, time for a reboot. Instead, they just keep stacking more books on the pile, 10 more every month, year after year. Look, I don't like every single change they've made over the years in 40k. I don't have to, and neither do you. All of that is subjective. But I still think it's worth giving some credit to the authors, considering just the sheer ludicrousness of how much they have to juggle when writing these books. From my perspective, if they get a 98 or 99% accuracy rating, then that's still an A. I'm not gonna get hung up on every little detail or inconsistency.
Weshammer, what kind of 40k universe have you lived in for the last few years? Games Workshop being good at keeping the story straight? Removing the amounts of small inconsistencies that you can find in all works of Games Workshop, they are not even close to 50% consistency by this point. Take the Primaris as a retcon, for example, because they are a retcon. Do you guys know what happened when the Primaris were announced and became forced into canon? And I'm talking before the 4 years of novels that it took before their lore became even acceptable as canon. When the Primaris released, the lore was that the new Primaris Genseed cured all of the curses and genetic mutations of all chapters and progenitor Primarchs that still afflicted their own sons. So yeah, when they became canon, you could say goodbye to the Wolfen, to the Red Thirst, to the Black Rage, to any other kind of mutation that made chapters unique. This was changed when an uproar happened in the community, because everyone rightfully pointed out that at this point we were just playing reskinned Ultramarines, and when Games Workshop realized how much they fucked up with a change in lore so big, they re-retconned the already retconned Primaris lore just to reinsert all of the curses and mutations back in. Great planning, Games Workshop. You should go in the corner and be ashamed of yourself. But this video created a big question in my mind. One of the main points Weshammer brings in the video is that the reveal, for how stupid it is, of the new Terminus Decree, because props to him, he does mention that it was pretty much confirmed what the Terminus Decree was in the final books of the Siege of Terra with the story of Basilio Foe. In his opinion, required at least a good novel, if not multiple, to be brought to light in an appropriate manner, instead of being just thrown as a paragraph in a codex. Now, this is an opinion like any other. In my opinion, the Terminus Decree should have remained a mystery. It is a mystery from over a decade, and whatever they did would have never lived up to the hype. But now I wonder, Weshammer, why are you making this argument for the Terminus Decree as a retcon? I looked at the entirety of your channel, and I don't see any video similar to this for the recent travesty of the female Custodes retcon. Now, before anybody screams at me, check on the channel. Watch these 3 videos in order, which are why female Custodes can't exist, the importance of lore, and as the final one, why female Space Marines can't exist. I covered all of this pretty extensively, but the main doubt I have is, seeing that the old video that we covered for Lord Destroyers of Weshammer talking about I would be okay with a retcon that inserted in the universe female Space Marines, why didn't he make the same argument for the female Custodians retcon? Added at random in a Custodes Codex, contradicting all sources and world building that came before. Again, watch the videos I listed to understand in which way, and that then was made worse by a tweet of Games Workshop confirming that not only now they exist, but that they always existed, spitting in the face of long-running series like the Horus Heresy. At this point I must think that you are not okay with this retcon because it touches something you yourself liked. And yet, you didn't touch the female Custodians one, because it agrees with your own ideology. Thing shown once again by the video we were sent for Lord Destroyers. Sorry for the interruption, but as we were writing this part of the video, something was brought to my attention. Weshammer talked about the female Custodians debacle in the comments of another video. Obviously, this only reinforces my suspicion that he didn't make a video on this specific topic like he did on the Terminus Decree, because it agrees with his political agenda. But let's see what he said all the same. Firstly, the main comment Weshammer is answering to claims that the female Custodians are fine. By lore, they are not fucking fine. Watch my video on why they can't exist for more details. But the answer of Weshammer, strangely in the first part, agrees with me. Retconning lore through a fucking tweet is extremely dumb, even by Games Workshop standards. Hope the specific community manager got fired or something. Then he claims that the lore of how they were introduced is a mystery. No, Weshammer, it is a retcon, not a mystery. They didn't appear in a specific point in time. By claim of Games Workshop, they were always there. There is no mystery, it is just dumb writing. And then he claims that if it was done with Space Marines, that would be a different conversation. Because Space Marines have as their core tenant in their stories their sense of brotherhood. Pio, what is one of the names of the Custodians faction?
Banana Studies.
I mean, yes, but also Brotherhood of Demigods! And before we get the usual smart guy in the comments that goes, Brotherhood doesn't mean only males. Okay, then explain to me what does Sisterhood mean? Just out of curiosity. The second answer instead is where things get extremely dumb. Weshammer, like Majorkill and Bricky did, claims that the female Custodians introduced in the 10th edition Custodes Codex have some pretty cool stuff. Pio, ma che cazzo di codex ha letto sto qua?
Non lo so, più leggo questa lore più diventa una merda.
3 dei più grossi youtuber di fottuta lore e tutti e 3 non capiscono un cazzo della lore. È una roba scandalosa. The 10th edition Adeptus Custodis Codex introduces a grand total of 3 officially named female characters. Calladei Star Ovalia Cash, Bayezzara Gonades, which makes my entire team laugh every time she's brought up, because in Italian gonadi means testicles, and this woman is called a Gonades, and Sister Stateriel. Do you want to know how good their lore is? If you want to know it fully, you will have to watch Lord Destroyers episode 6, where we demolished all of this lore beginning to end. But to give you the short version, Tarovala Cash was part of a blood game that didn't follow any of the rules of any prior blood game for some reason, and their entire plan for the blood game was live in Terra, requisitioning a ship, have a teleporterium installed in it, steal a cyclonic warhead, an exterminatus level bomb from a depot, go back to Terra, and teleport it into the Imperial Palace. Now, removing how dumb and overly complicated this entire plan was, to the point that the lore behind there is literally 2 pages long, and the plan would have 100% failed around here. And the more you read their story, the dumber it fucking gets. Thank you, Games Workshop. So, she didn't obey the ancient rules of the Blood Games. Made a plan so overly complicated that there was no fucking way in hell it would have worked to begin with. And their entire plan was teleporting a bomb in the throne room, when the Imperial Palace is defended by a state-of-the-art system of void shields called the Aegis. And when even the lowliest human soldier knows that teleporting isn't an option against void shields, it is literally the first rule you learn about them. You cannot fucking teleport inside a void shield. You would expect an highly trained expert strategist of the elite of the custodians to know that! But I guess the writer didn't know either. The second custodian is Bayezzara Gonades, the inventor of such an incredible military strategy called the Bayezzara Constellation, that was so revolutionary as a tactic for fighting that her entire shield company was named after her.
Yes, go Queen Slay!
Do you want to know what the tactic is? The tactic is very simple. Bayezzara and her warriors mount their jet bikes as their void ship air brakes across the target's world's atmosphere. The moment drop velocity is achieved, the constellation depart the vessel's launch decks and plunge through the atmosphere like falling stars. And before you think I am making this up, here is the screenshot of the passage. Now, this is all well and good. If it did have any fucking sense behind it, removing the Primarch Vulcan tested the planetary re-entry through an atmosphere when he escaped the clutches of Conrad Kurz. Just saying, he didn't arrive on the surface alive. But even then, these custodians have as a tactic re-entering a planet atmosphere without any kind of inertia dampeners or heat shielding, in literally just their armors and on space fucking bikes. The heat will melt the joints of their armors and burn them to ashes before they even reach the surface. And the third custodian instead is Sister Stateriel. Sister Stateriel died against demons on one of the first engagements of a campaign that by lore has not yet concluded. This is the cool lore of the female custodians, like by Majorkill, Bricky and Weshammer.
I have read better fanfictions with characters named unironically Karen.
So, accuracy, decent. Opinions, completely and utterly nonsensical. Games Workshop is a $1 billion company. Stop trying to find excuses and spending your time trying to correct their mistakes. If anything, they have shown a complete lack of quality control in the last half decade. So, if they get something wrong, stop trying to justify it for them. And say openly that they have made a mistake. Because even if they will never confirm it, we all know when they do make mistakes. And the Terminus Decree is the smallest example of their complete and utter incompetence in the last years.
We are all passionate about lore, but we should at least demand standards from GW when it comes to writing. It seems they are just publishing random stuff at this point.
And now we move to the next one, Arbitor Ian. To give some context, I never had a strong opinion on Arbitor Ian. Mainly because I never actively watched him as I was learning 40k. The first videos of his I watched were for Lore Destroyers, where we watched his appearance at IGN as a lore expert to answer popular questions. Which, if you ask me, was completely wasted time. The questions were medium level at best and nothing a check on the wiki couldn't clarify. The majority of them could be answered by P of all people. They didn't need an expert.
I don't know if I should feel flattered or offended.
And removing some grievances I had with some of his answers, like when he answered that the Black Shields are members of a chapter and such that for one reason or another, honorable or not, have left their chapter and joined the Death Watch, completely ignoring that Black Shields were a thing during the Horus Heresy, and they were members of traitor legions that never betrayed the Imperium of Men and stayed loyal. And after the corruption of their former legions, they dyed their pauldron having the insignia of the Legion black out of shame. And his comment, that another YouTuber we will soon talk about called EonsOfBattle repeated, that the creation of Space Marines is literal magic. No, it's fucking science and genetical engineering. Want to know more? We explored all of it in the video What is a Space Marine? Go and watch it, I can guarantee to you the word magic doesn't appear in the entire video.
Magic!
But then, I was sent his videos. And oh boy. My opinion went from neutral to straight up Italian anger in a matter of minutes. I will put it in the simplest way I can to explain what I think of Arbitor Ian. Arbitor Ian is a liar. Plain and simple. We watched a grand total of 3 videos of Arbitor Ian for Lord Destroyers, and all of them either lacked context, misrepresented reality, or straight up lied just so he could claim to be right. Let's go in order. The first video we watched was The Case for Female Space Marines, 28 mag challenge. So, let's debunk it claim by claim. The video starts with him obviously already insulting the opposite side, calling them the wrong kind of nerds for being against one of the biggest retcons that could ever happen in 40k.
Female Space Marines, nothing is more likely to get the wrong sorts of nerds clutching their beards in dismay.
He then claims, obviously, after discounting every doubt people have on the matter as mainly sex stream at the agent.
So before we start, we should be aware that a lot of the arguments against female Space Marines are nothing but angry little boys being sexist online. That's often the underlying thing going on.
That the limitation that Space Marine chapters cannot recruit females because of the genetical composition of gene seed is very rarely mentioned.
First, because it changes the background. Okay, fine, yeah it would. The current fluff states that only a small proportion of people can become Space Marines. They must be male because zygotes are key to male hormones and tissue types. There you go. No female Space Marines. But it's worth saying that this isn't stated very often. It appears in this old issue of White Dwarf, but that's kind of it.
Now, you can watch my video on this matter, because I spent a full hour dismantling all the arguments of people that advocate for this retcon in every way possible, just in case you want to know more. But I challenge you to check in every single edition of a Space Marine Codex and look under the recruitment section. I'm sure you will find the paragraph that for one reason or another limits recruitment to only males. In fact, the only codex in recent times that doesn't have it is Horus Heresy 3.0, and everyone got angry about that, because the line was moved from the recruitment section into another section of the codex. So, we're already catching lies here, Arbiter. Let's go on. He then, as usual, claims that this retcon changes nothing because Warhammer 40K is always subjected to retcons of some kind.
So, having female Space Marines in the world would require changing the background. But so what? Warhammer fluff changes all the time. Even the fluff around Space Marines has had pretty big changes before.
Obviously leaving out the fact that most of those retcons were of very small stuff that had at the time very little lore, and not of rules and world building that have been there from the 1990s to the point that changing a little rule would invalidate hundreds of books and codexes. He's pretty much comparing the retcon of removing Ilian Nastase, the Half-Eldar Chief Librarian of the Ultramarines, that was an Half-Eldar Space Marine in an officer position of a chapter, in a very extremely xenophobic Imperium that doesn't tolerate mutants, so you can see why he was retconned, with demolishing the foundations of an entire faction overnight just because retcons happen. Very good argument, Ian! Hope you back it up with more than just your personal opinion. He then obviously announces that Games Workshop could just retcon and say they always existed, and uses an excuse that for 30 years that we have been told that Marines are only male, it was all articles and pieces of lore presented by unreliable narrators, leaving alone the fact that the principle of the unreliable narrator cannot apply.
I go into this a bit more in my recent video on canon in 40k, but Games Workshop have a few established ways of making changes that aren't just outright retcons, but would easily solve this. For one, they could just announce that female Space Marines have always been possible, like they do whenever a new model's released, and that this ancient White Dwarf article is just an example of unreliable narrator. The ancient scribe that wrote it was just wrong. That's been done plenty of times before, but it doesn't explain why we haven't seen them yet.
Yes, I appear against Professor Pio. The concept of the unreliable narrator applies to works of fiction or historical reality when the events are being recounted by people that took part in them after the events have already taken place. This means that the only way in which you can have an unreliable narrator is if two conditions are true at the same time. The narrator must be a character inside the story, and he must be recounting it after by his own testimony it has already happened in the past. If the narrator is not a character in the story, he has no reason to be unreliable, because it is an omniscient narrator with no reason to lie. If the character instead is part of the story, but the story is happening as you're reading it,
I like to explain it as the story is happening as you turn the page.
Then once again the unreliable narrator can't exist, because the story is happening in the present from the eyes of the character you're following, meaning that you're seeing what they are currently seeing as it is happening in the present, so they cannot misinterpret what is happening at that very moment in front of their eyes.
He obviously then uses the excuse of the Primaris and plot device Belisarius Cole, saying that Games Workshop could simply say that he created them.
The easiest way, though, is just to take advantage of 40k's new advancing timeline. Primaris Space Marines were introduced a few years ago, and in the background they're an improvement on the original Space Marine template that changes the biological procedures that go into their production. In world, as you'd expect, this is a controversial decision with the potential to be seen as heresy, but it's pushed through by Robert Guillemot.
Ignoring the fact that Belisarius Cole didn't create the gene seed, just upgraded it. He doesn't know how to adapt it on women, as the gene seed by itself is incompatible, as all the Primarchs were males. He then goes on the usual tirade about how they changed nothing.
It would take one line of text to announce that Cole also figured out gene seed that works on girls, a change that is completely believable in world, wouldn't change any of the previous fluff, and works really well with the Imperium's general ethos that all humans are a resource to be used.
About how Space Marines are asexual.
So yeah, female Space Marines would either change something or require an addition, but so what? So does everything. Finally, on this point, even if it changes the fluff, how much does this really change the setting? I've been using the terms male and female Space Marines throughout this, partly because those are the usual terms used, but we know that sex and gender are kind of irrelevant to Space Marines themselves, and certainly irrelevant to any of the stories they're in. I'm conflating a few things here, but they're portrayed as effectively asexual, aromantic, have had most human emotions removed, and seem to be incapable of experiencing love except for filial, that between family.
Ignoring the fact that he works against his own argument, as a change that changes nothing has no reason to happen. And even then, Marines, as confirmed in the first book of the Horus Heresy, might be asexual, but they still have male organs. A remembrancer in the book Horus Rising sees the organ of Garviel Loken while he's showering, and she even mentions that he's wasted as a space marine with that kind of equipment.
So in the context of a typical Black Library novel, apart from a few pronouns, what would allowing female Space Marines actually change? Arguably nothing.
He repeated like 2 times that it changes nothing. How does he fail to see that if it changes nothing then it has no reason to happen?
He then commits one of the gravest sins of the 40k setting, which is just ignoring the nuances of all the orders of the Adepta Sororitas and just calling them the female army of 40k like a true fucking lore master would.
If we're talking about the aesthetic of women in power armor being done, well, Space Marines and Sisters of Battle have considerably different aesthetics and cultural influences, and everyone seems to be fine with having a range of different aesthetics for men in power armor. Why is women in power armor just limited to this? But mostly, I think when people say this, they're arguing that the model range already includes one faction with female models, so why do you need another? Viking army, check. Roman army, check. Female army, check. TV tropes would call this the Smurfette principle, and the issue with it is that it assumes being female is the sole trait a character needs.
Now listen, we can't go through the entire video, because we made a Lord Destroyers episode on the videos we're talking about here, and we had to stop every 15 seconds to debunk something this guy said. The rest of the video is literally a tirade on how the Space Marines could be seen as a satire of toxic masculinity, patriarchy, and all the bullshit people like him believe that 40k represents.
That Space Marines can be seen as a satirical comment on, well, a number of things, including religious patriarchy, masculinity, and gender. Warhammer 40k was written as a satire of, well, many things, and one of those things was organised religion, particularly Christianity, because that was the dominant one in the UK the writers grew up in, and at the time still had over-influence on popular culture. Christianity is famously a patriarchal religion and full of father-son dynamics, and the origin stories of the Space Marines inherited a lot of that. The Horus Heresy owes a lot to Paradise Lost, and themes like the betrayal of the father are prominent in 40k. Space Marines over the years have have been more and more likened to monastic orders. Space Marines being men could be seen as part of the wider religious satire of the setting. And you could go even further than this when you think about what Space Marines actually are. Children, taken before puberty and given an alternative to growing up that turns them into fighting machines. Big, strong superheroes who never get old and never get sick and hang out with their friends all day fighting bad guys. They're a silly 8-year-old boy's idea of what being a man is, all duty and honor and fighting and no emotions except anger and no girls. That's just toxic masculinity. Surprising how this one never gets used by the angry gamers, right?
Obviously without proof. Just look at Captain Titus and Lieutenant Mira in the first Space Marine game. The man gave himself up to the Inquisition just so Mira wouldn't be captured and tortured. Pure toxic masculinity.
You will submit to my authority, Captain, or the Inquisition must conclude that you have corrupted every Ultramarine under your command, not to mention those who stand at your side.
Ignore his threats. Come on.
The Inquisition will destroy you, Mira, and the Ultramarines will be forever dishonored. Leave my brothers and the Lieutenant alone. I will come with you.
He then misinterprets comments made by Alan Merritt regarding the original first edition minis that everyone says were female Space Marines. They were not, as confirmed by Alan Merritt himself in our video about it. Go and watch it. The first comment he misinterprets reads, "These were sculpted by the designer as female Space Marines, but it wasn't an official brief, and they weren't released as that."
Alan Merritt was for many years Games Workshop's head of IP, but back when those were released he was the design manager of the studio, and in 2018 he jumped on a thread where he explained a bit of the original decision-making process. These were sculpted by the designer as female Space Marines, but it wasn't an official brief as such, and they weren't released as that. The reason there aren't female Space Marines has nothing to do with lore or background or character of Marines. It's to do with the simple logistics of making and selling miniatures. Early Citadel ranges had female versions of most character types. In fact, when we produced the C range, the intention was that upwards of 25% of the models would be female. But retailers kept complaining to us that customers weren't buying the female models, and could we not include any in the restocks? So we took the female models out of circulation. So when we got to the new Rogue Trader ranges and exciting new Space Marine model ranges, it was difficult to see how we could logistically add an occasional female model to the mix. We knew that if every Marine blister had a female model as one of the three, then folk would complain, so we didn't make any female ones. All the background fluff about why there are only male Marines is there to justify a commercial logistics issue. So the reason for Space Marines being male is basically a marketing decision based on what nerds in 1987 wanted to buy. They listened to their customer base at the time, which means that if nerds in 2021 want female Space Marines, surely the good business decision is to change it.
But the comment continues with, "The process of making and releasing models back in the day was quite varied. Designers tried stuff, and we asked them to make all manner of weird and wonderful things." Pretty much confirming that the designers were throwing shit at the wall at random and seeing what stuck. Nobody told them to make those models. They made them and they were discarded later. And then an entire comment about how the non-existence of female Space Marines was a logistical issue. Yes, but it was when their lore was still up in the air. And because people didn't like the objectively ugly old female models of Games Workshop, they stopped producing them and justified it as an in-lore reason. Meaning that what was at first a logistical issue then became confirmed lore. And now it cannot be changed without massive problems. He then has the goal to mention a lore reason as to why the Adeptus Sororitas are all female.
But wait, they cry, Sisters of Battle have shapely armor and boob plate. Well, yeah, but there are some reasons for that. First, Sisters of Battle really are just really physically fit women, without the crazy growth hormones or extra organs. But also, Sororitas armor has obviously female coding because it's really important in world that people realize they're women. The Adeptus Sororitas exist because of the decree passive that stops the Minotaurum from having men underarms. They're essentially a loophole. So their gender is designed to be obvious through their armor.
After for the entire video he has advocated that we should retcon the lore as to why Marines are only male for no reason at all, by going openly against canon. And he then, at the end, explains how he will change the lore to include females. He wouldn't change the sprue, he wouldn't change the models, he will leave everything as is. We'll point at a random armored Space Marine with an helmet on and say that's female. pretty much showing that he wants to change the lore not only for no reason, but with no practical use either.
So shorter? Nope. Pin-up proportions? Nope. Long hair and makeup? Probably not. Just a female head swap? I'm not really a good enough sculptor to manage that. So where does that leave us? Well, for now, here's what I think a female Space Marine in full armor would look like. Exactly the same. This is what I'm going to be using as the basis for my 28 mag entry, a standard intercessor. And this is why Games Workshop should make the change. It's the easiest way of giving the fans what they want, because they don't really need to make any new models. They just need to say it's possible.
So, wait. His entire argument is that GW should change the lore, because why not?
The perfect argument coming from a 40k lore master. If only somebody made a 1 hour long video debunking every single way to introduce them into the lore in extreme detail. But if it was only this video, then I could let it slide. But we watched another two, and things only got worse as we did so. Secondly, we watched the video Canon and Retcons in Warhammer 40k. Everything is canon. Now, I don't want to waste too much time on Arbitor Ian, so I will briefly tell you what this video is about. This video covers how Arbitor Ian doesn't understand the concept of world building, the concept of timeline, the concept of retcon, the concept of addition versus substitution, and the concept that Games Workshop coined the phrase everything is canon but not everything is true because they had writers that sucked and couldn't say so openly. Like CS Goto for an example. He even says in the video that if something is retconned and you don't like the change, you can just go back and be happy that what got retconned still probably exists somewhere around the galaxy.
But this way of working allows loads more flexibility in a game that isn't really intended to have a linear timeline. It's designed to be flexible. And generally, old fluff is always kept around in some form. If you like something about the setting and Games Workshop do something new with it, then the likelihood is the version you like still exists somewhere.
Failing to understand that a retcon is a retroactive timeline change, meaning that stuff hasn't suddenly changed and there is a new version at the same time as the old one, but that the new version is the only one that always existed. Want to know more? Either watch the episode of Lore Destroyers where we covered this video, or first watch this video and then watch our video The Importance of Lore, to learn how lore and world building truly works, because Arbitor Ian seriously doesn't know how they work. And the third video, unfortunately, we watched in private as we were writing this video. It is called How Do You Solve a Problem Like the Imperium? Taking 40k lore back from the far right.
Ah, he's one of those that sees 40k through the lenses of political ideology.
Unfortunately, it seems a trait common with people that don't understand 40k, yes. In this video, obviously, Arbitor Ian claims that the Imperium in 40k should be seen as satire.
So the Imperium of Man is terrible. It's an authoritarian, oppressive, intolerant, incredibly conservative, xenophobic state that allows no other option to exist in the galaxy. And also, it's fascist, right? Well, I could do a whole video on that subject, and we could argue over the exact definition of fascism and if the Imperium fits that description, but it's actually irrelevant, because like the First Order in Star Wars, the Imperium is coded fascist.
Despite even the beginner's guide to 40k that released recently claimed that it moved away from satire, and it is now a tale of tragedy of humanity struggling against the dying light. He then spends the entire video dunking on the methods of the Imperium, methods adopted out of desperation for the survival of humanity, all the while accusing them of being fascist, and then showing off only pictures of Nazis.
But you're meant to look at this and be reminded of this. You're meant to look at uniforms like this and be reminded of this. They're code words for this is bad, and the Imperium of Man works in a similar way. We're meant to see the xenophobia, the incredible conservatism and tradition, the obsession with purity and pure genetics, the worship of militarism and creating superhumans as, well, this.
Obviously, we will ignore the fact that the Imperium of Men is technically an authoritarian feudal theocracy, as every planet is left to govern in the manner they see fit, as long as they pay the tithes and enforce even loosely the religion of the Emperor to stave off chaos. But everything people don't like in this day and age is fascist, at least for people that understand zero of politics, like Arbitor Ian and many other 40k YouTubers. He spends the entire video making claims without showing even an hint of proof. He even complains that we only see Space Marines in a good light from the side of the Imperium Imperium of men and humanity.
As the setting grew more mainstream, the aspect of Space Marines as noble warrior monks became more and more prominent, resulting in a world where these abused, intolerant, mass-murdering child soldiers are only ever portrayed from the Imperium's point of view, as genuine heroes. This is like Star Wars but with no rebels, where the stormtroopers are our lead characters doing the good work of the First Order.
Which raises the question, why the fuck would we care about the opinion of a military force from the side of the people trying actively to exterminate us? I doubt their opinion will be good when they get exterminated in return for trying. Don't you think, Arbitor Ian? He then complains that Games Workshop is portraying the Imperium of Men as a necessary evil.
Second, as the setting expanded, it started to justify the Imperium. As concepts like the Warp or the Horus Heresy were fleshed out, the Imperium became less of an oppressive state and more of a necessary oppressive state. In the world of 40k right now, the justification for the Imperium's actions is that without them, humanity would be doomed. The result is a body of work which spends vastly more time portraying the Imperium as a necessary evil, and the Space Marines and Commissars within it as noble heroes, than it does pointing out that they're bad. It may be the unintended development of 30 years of game design, but we've ended up with a setting that states that sometimes the horrible fascist option might be the only way.
Which it is by definition seeing the lore written in the last 2 decades. Just watch my video The Imperium are the good guys of 40k to know why in extreme detail, with cited sources. But then he lies about the claims of Warhammer is for everyone, and the Imperium is driven by hate, Warhammer is not.
Anyway, the upshot is 40k can have a bit of an unsavoury reputation in the wider gaming world for attracting fascists. And while we all know it's a tiny minority, it's a big enough problem that Games Workshop have had to make multiple statements condemning being a fan of the Imperium and confirming that, despite almost everything they release saying the opposite, the Imperium is still totally meant to be satire. If you have to explain that, then it isn't working.
Completely not providing the context that the first one was released during the 2020's George Floyd riots in the US. And obviously everyone got angry about it because Games Workshop is British and had no business as a toy company to comment about the riots and their underlying political issues. Just watch the final part of my female Space Marine video to know why. And the second instead was for a Spanish wargamer that entered a tournament in his country, dressed with clothes sporting political symbols and signing himself Austrian Painter. The guy did it literally for trolling, but he won the tournament because everyone else in it was so weak and offended by his attire that they forfeited en masse and made him win. Thing that pushed Games Workshop to release this article. It is not a problem of the fans in 40k, it is a problem of the trolling of a single person and the weakness of other 40k players. He then makes an argument that Games Workshop should start portraying the Imperium of Men as an empire facing impossible odds and having to keep their own morality in a grey area out of pure survival, and start portraying it again as the bad guys by using the Cicatrix Maledictum as a plot device to create smaller human empires that are not aligned with the Imperium, but fare better.
But I think there is a way you can keep the Imperium basically the same, but remove it as a necessary evil, and since 40k now has a progressing storyline, it's not even that difficult to do. Here's my suggestion. Warhammer 40k 10th edition is released, and just like the last 2 editions, the timeline has moved forwards. The Cicatrix Maledictum has spread across the galaxy, vomiting forth legions of chaos and Xenos and cutting off vast sections of the Imperium. Guilliman's Indomitus Crusade has rallied the defenders, doing a good job of shoring up the new, reduced frontiers of the Imperium, but the tendrils of the Cicatrix continue to spread, isolating more and more of the galaxy from Imperial control. The core of the Imperium is intact, shored up by its embattled military, but by now whole sectors have been cut off for hundreds of years and had to survive as best they can. Many of these areas continue to think of themselves or declare themselves as Imperial, at least on the face of things, lest the warp storms calm and the Hammer of the Emperor return. But how much lip service they actually pay to Terra and its institutions varies. The 10th edition setting opens with this, a divided galaxy with a few big human factions and the implication that there are loads of smaller ones. The biggest of these, by far, is still the Imperium, struggling to hold what it can together. As Lord Commander of the Imperium, Guilliman's tendency is for unity at any cost, but even he realizes that, for now, with chaos at the gate, alliance might have to replace conquest. This opens the way for all sorts of new stories. What about an area that was taken over by the Helots of a destroyed Astartes chapter? An industrial zone completely run by mercantile contracts? Human empires allied to the Tau or in league with other Xenos? Areas cut off from the Mechanicum but who seem to be doing fine developing their own technologies? Petty kingdoms, freedom fighters, new republics. Some of them fall without the support of the Imperium, just as the Imperium always said, but loads of them do just fine. Suddenly, the great lie of the Imperium is exposed. Maybe it isn't the only way.
This completely betrays a lack of understanding of the Imperium in general. As I explored in the video The Imperium are the good guys of 40k, the Imperium of Men was the only choice, and a justified response to many failed attempts to live all well together. With aliens, with mutants, with psychers, and then with the warp itself. He even has the courage of using the Interrex as an example of an empire that existed during the Great Crusade that was faring pretty decently. Until the Imperium found them and forcibly annexed them, even if they mostly wiped them out. A little reminder, this was the same fucking period of the Rangdan Xenocides and the Ullanor Crusade against the biggest orc empire to ever exist in the galaxy. So even if we don't count Chaos, something these people were 100% ignorant about, and that would have wiped them out, the orcs or the Rangdans would have reached them at some point. And if even the Imperium with its hundreds of thousands of space marines deployed, because there were over 300,000 deployed in the Rangdan Xenocides, together with 3 Primarchs, almost lost, what the fuck would these people even hope to do? Following the siege of Xana, the war went on for more than 2 decades. Millions upon millions of deaths were suffered by the Imperium. 19 inhabited systems lay to waste, and a ban on further expedition past the exclusive post of Endris and Morox was put in place. During the war, contingents of 9 separate legions would become embroiled in the fighting, more than 300,000 space marines being deployed at the height of the conflict, with 3 Primarchs that led their own legions in battle against the Rangda, with the main honor to being the foremost commander of the Second Rangdan War given to Lionel Johnson of the Dark Angels.
Seemed like a desperate struggle for survival.
Even more than you might think, Pio. When the last expeditionary fleet had breached the eastern fringes of the galaxy, in doing so they had attracted the attention of the Rangdan Serapvors, a species of macabre power and technological might. It seemed that the Imperium was going to meet its end here. Entire expeditionary fleets went to their deaths without a single survivor. Worlds were laid to waste, dozens of Titan legions were obliterated by the end of the war, and it was even said that entire legions of space marines met their end there. Then the conflict was swept under the rug, or records of it sealed with the last copies given to the Dark Angels for safekeeping. The veterans that have fought and survived the war either mind-wiped or eliminated altogether. The planets left barren by the Rangdan War and Taint were simply abandoned, and then the Remembrancers brought in to make up an half-fax, half-fiction tale of the Xenocides to feed the Imperium. Because the Emperor thought that the only way for the Imperium to rebuild after the second Xenocide was for the Rangda to vanish from all existence and history, and for humanity to never learn about how near their extinction they came from the war they had just fought. Forced alliance is the only way in the galaxy of 40k, because we either stand united or get annihilated. It is why seceding and betraying the Imperium is not allowed. Reason 1, power of the Imperium. Reason 2, humans can survive only when working together, so you either work with them or they will replace you with somebody that will. And all of this, all of the lies, the lack of context, the complete and utter ignorance on how the Imperium works and why, because once you learn the history of humanity as we did for the video on why the Imperium are the good guys, you see that they are pretty much justified in almost everything they did, because they tried an open-minded approach and were almost exterminated every time. He wants changes just because he can't fathom that the only way humanity can survive in 40k is by being as brutal as the enemies trying to kill them.
You have pirates, mercenaries, new states, and the evil old Imperium lurking in the background. You want the Imperium like it's always been? Great, you can still have them. This idea involves no retcons. But now there's other options too. Factions who are openly hostile or obviously doing better than the Imperium, but who don't get immediately portrayed as heretics and wiped out in the next paragraph. And because of that, it's impossible for anyone to say the Imperium is a necessary evil. The Imperium think that, but it was never necessary, and the tragic fact that it existed for 10,000 years in spite of that keeps the setting just as grimdark as ever.
There were even people under our video that commented that we have no proof that the Dark Age of technology humans were a lot more tolerant than the Imperium. In fact, we do have proof they were. The sheer existence of all the alien races of 40k is proof that they were a lot more tolerant. The Dark Age of technology had AIs controlling armies, and weapons so advanced they could have easily wiped out almost all aliens of the galaxy. The only ones they would have had a problem at the time destroying were the Eldars, because there were trillions of them, and they still had much of their very advanced technology to use, together with their psychic powers. And we all know how that ended. If you don't know the context as to why the Imperium became what it is, you really shouldn't fucking talk about it.
So your verdict on Arbitor Ian is?
His channel is a complete and utter mess. He is an ideology-driven individual that doesn't bring proof, lies about the lore all the time, and purposefully leaves out the context of everything that will make the Imperium seem justified in their actions and morally grey, just because it doesn't espouse his own ideology. And because he can't accept that the only real sin if you are fighting for the survival of your own species is losing. This guy a lore expert. What a joke. Now we move to EonsOfBattle. And before you leave a comment telling me that he's a channel that mainly makes tutorials on mini painting, we were sent several of his videos to watch for lore destroyers, where he made comments and explained lore in between painting tips. So, if you don't want to attract the eye of the Italians, don't explain lore you don't know. And especially, don't fucking lie so much about it.
What are we? Lore boogeyman now? If you say wrong lore 3 times in the mirror, Pontius appears to hit you with a frying pan.
The first video of EonsOfBattle we watched was his video building and discussing female space marines. Problem? And we start directly from the intro with the bullshit.
Female Space Marines, let's do it. I want to talk about the controversy, the phenomenon, the absolute meme that girl Space Marines are. I want to build some female Space Marines for myself, and I want to talk about my solution if Games Workshop ever wants to add lady Space Marines into the lore. It's a lot easier than you think.
And then we move to one of the funniest moments we ever had on the Lore Destroyer series. First of all, EonsOfBattle claims that the creation process of Space Marines is literal magic.
So what are the arguments against female Space Marines? Because there's a few I keep hearing. I would say the big one is it's impossible for women to receive the gene seed and be turned into Space Marines. So, putting aside the fact that the Space Marine creation process is pure magic, I have read every single Space Marine codex ever published, and nowhere does it actually say it's impossible to give the gene seed to women, only that it's only been given to men.
Which pushes me to ask, Eons, what did you smoke that day? Were you high? The fact that it is sci-fi made up science doesn't make it magic. It makes it still sci-fi fucking science. Once again, if you want to learn how the creation process of a Space Marine work, we made a video about it, with sources mentioned, and not fucking once we used the word magic in it. What he said is misleading for what he says right after.
I have read every single Space Marine codex ever published, and nowhere does it actually say it's impossible to give the gene seed to women, only that it's only been given to men.
Oh yeah, I actually trust that he has read all the codexes, and he's saying the full truth about it, especially when he claims that nowhere it is said that gene seed can't be given to women. He just missed. The Horus Heresy Book 1 Betrayal, page 28.
The process of initiation. A Space Marine of the Legion is Astartes is transformed from mere human frailty by a threefold process of genetic manipulation, surgical augmentation, and psycho-conditioning that in ideal circumstances takes place over a number of years over the course of the individual's adolescence. That the process is conducted while the subject body is undergoing maturation represents the highest chance of survivability and the lowest chance of tissue rejection, and although at least partial enhancement with adult subjects is possible, it is extremely dangerous and often unpredictable in results. The process by which Space Marines are created relies inherently on the hormonal and biological makeup of the human male, meaning that only males can be subjected to the transformation. In practice, only a small percentage of potential candidates will for one reason or another be regarded as suitable, either because of genetic, environmental, or psychological factors. The resultant Space Marine is in many ways no longer functionally human, but in others massively advantaged in terms of physical strength, durability and reflexes over even the most physically adept, unaugmented human warrior. Their bodies are also phenomenally efficient biological engines, resistant to disease, contamination, radiation, and poison.
Description that is mirrored on the Codex of the Horus Heresy Age of Darkness 2nd edition rulebook at page 31, almost word for word, a codex that came out a year before this video was released.
The process of initiation. A Space Marine is transformed from mere human frailty by a threefold process of genetic manipulation, surgical augmentation, and psycho-conditioning that ideally takes place over several years during the individual's adolescence. That the process is conducted while the body is undergoing maturation presents the highest chance of survivability and the lowest chance of tissue rejection. And although partial enhancements of adult subjects is possible, it is extremely dangerous. The process by which Space Marines are created relies inherently on the hormonal and biological makeup of the human male, meaning that only males can be subjected to the transformation. In practice, only a small percentage of potential candidates will for one reason or another be regarded as suitable because of genetic, environmental or psychological factors, and even amongst these, many do not survive the process.
Unfortunately, this description wasn't carried to the latest Horus Heresy 3.0 rulebook, and trust me when I say it, everyone was angry about it. But funnily enough, even in the book of the tabletop RPG Deathwatch, specifically the core rulebook, at page 28 we once again get confirmation that Space Marines can only be male.
Gender and appearance. Due to the special nature of the zygotes that make up a Space Marine's gene seed, all Space Marines are male.
I have read every single Space Marine Codex ever published, and nowhere does it actually say it's impossible to give the gene seed to women, only that it's only been given to men.
So that was a fucking lie.
And we will obviously ignore the numerous mentions to Space Marines being men, having always male pronouns, being always called sons literally fucking everywhere, even the Emperor saying,
"They shall be my finest warriors, these men who give themselves to me. Like clay I shall mold them, and in the furnace of war forge them."
Because obviously all those references are not important. So yes, another bullshit claim. Let's continue, Eons. He then mentions the quote from Malkador about making some of the Primarchs female, quote that is also discussed in our female Space Marines video.
And sure, you could say that because it's only been given to men, it's impossible to put it in women, but allow me to quote the lore. A quote from my man, Malkador the Sigillite.
Who am I? I'm the greatest. Who am I? I'm getting paid. Who am I?
Malkador smiled. You brothers, such a nest of rivalries. I warned him, the Emperor, to make you sisters, that it would make things more civilized. He thought I was joking. I wasn't. If the Emperor's BFF and the smartest human to ever exist in all of 40K says it would have been possible to create female Primarchs, then certainly it is possible to create female Space Marines.
But first to see that the Emperor thought the idea was so stupid that he thought a smart person like Malkador was just joking, and pretty much laughed in his face. Because he knew the risks of giving women to the Space Marines. The Demonculaba is a thing, Eons. You should read the books. He then tries to justify the introduction into the lore of female Space Marines, saying that first thing, they don't break the lore. Which, fucking news, they do! They ruin 35 plus years of established lore. But then try to justify it by saying that Space Marines are people with emotions? I am not joking. Watch.
So moving on to argument number 2, some might claim that sure, it's not necessarily impossible for female Space Marines to exist, but it would destroy 35 years of established lore. Well, to that I would say, no it doesn't. Sure, Space Marines are a brotherhood, but not really. In the codexes, Space Marines are described as psycho-indoctrinated super soldiers who know nothing about warfare. But when you crack open any 40K novel, you find out Space Marines are just people with their own thoughts, feelings, and opinions on things. The Horus Heresy series is a 50-novel epic about Space Marines having a lot more humanity and free will than the Emperor planned for. Humanity, not man-nanity.
That's not an argument.
Removing that what he just said is pure bullshit, again, watch our videos to learn why in detail, but this entire argument is, they won't change anything because Space Marines are more human than you might think. Yeah, I don't think them having emotion justifies the retcon of 35 years of established lore, Eons. What the fuck are you even trying to say? He then again gets to discounting the Adeptus Sororitas in general as a faction as just the woman in power armor, completely ignoring their entire nuances, orders, suborders, and all the lore that goes in it, pretty much doing a sexism.
It's that female Space Marines actually already exist, and it's the Sisters of Battle, so you should just collect that. And I would say that's a bad argument. Space Marines are incredibly diverse with a huge variety of modeling opportunities. Your Space Marines can be Vikings, they can be medieval knights, they can be ninjas, they can be blue, they can be vampires. Where if you want to collect a Sisters of Battle army, unless you want to kit bash and convert 90% of your miniatures, they're going to be corseted ecclesiastical babes with bob cuts. And I can totally understand somebody saying that they want women in their armies, but not that.
And then at the end we get one of the stupidest claims I've ever heard in my life as a lore master. That it shouldn't be the Imperium that makes female Space Marines, but Chaos, and specifically Fabius Bile.
My ladies are not officially canon the way that I've made them, more just a fun novelty. And you know what? I don't think Games Workshop should just shoehorn women into the Astartes randomly after 35 years. It'd feel too easy and not give this achievement the prominence it deserves. I think there's a better way, a spikier way, a more chaotic way. And that way is Fabulous Bill, Fabius Bile, the Primogenitor, the Clone Lord. He's been hard at work for 10,000 years trying to create his own superior Space Marines, and one day, he will do it. And how can Games Workshop prove that his Space Marines are better than the original Space Marines? By allowing men and women, twice the recruitment pool. His super people would swarm across the galaxy and bring the Imperium of Mankind to its knees.
The guy that called the Space Marines as a species a genetical dead end, and decided to make his own personal species of enhanced humans called the New Men. And then he goes on to the very stupid argument that this will show how Chaos Marines are superior, because they allow men and women in them. Completely fucking ignoring the fact that the recruitment pool argument is utter horseshit. Because the recruitment problem was never tied to the recruits themselves, but the gene seed. I can bring out examples just from the top of my head about Chaos Marines raiding Imperial worlds just to steal gene seed to make more Chaos Marines. Because there is so corrupted and gene seed so scarce they can't use it. The second battle of Hydra Cordatus between the Imperial Fist and the Iron Warriors happened because the Iron Warriors wanted to raid the gene seed vaults of the Imperial Fists. Raid that would be successful and create the storyline that led to the Demonculaba. And if we want to be specific, Fabius Bile created a perfect clone of Fulgrim, that when he was captured by Trazyn the Infinite, he sold to Trazyn as a collector item in exchange for his own freedom and a shit ton of Emperor's Children untainted gene seed. So yeah, I call bullshit on this entire argument too. But it isn't the only video of Eons we had to watch. The second video we had to watch of EonsOfBattle was his video Female Custodes, Games Workshop Goes Too Far, which I will specify now. It's a sarcastic title. He agrees with probably the worst retcon done to 40k in the last 2 decades. So, let's see what he says in this one.
Custodes can now be women. And the internet goes wild. I think that this is a welcome change. There's no actual reason why the Custodes have always been men, they just always have been.
And he lies from the start. There is claims and written lore that Custodes are only men. In fact, they were always only recruited, as the codexes will tell you, from the sons of the highest nobles of Terra. If you want more details, you find more breakdowns of it in these 2 videos. He then goes on to repeat some of the stupid arguments we already dismantled in the last video, so we won't repeat them, until he mentions that it makes sense that custodians exist for 2 reasons, and I still can't wrap my head around the argument he was trying to make here.
But I do think it makes a lot of sense that women can be custodians, because actually, the Custodes were made for 2 reasons. They were to be the personal army of the Emperor that could actually do anything the Emperor needed them to do, and they were meant to be his personal friends, his companions. And so what's really interesting about the Custodes is they actually are aware of the current state of the galaxy versus what it used to be. They each learned the entire history of mankind and the history of the galaxy. And so they can actually see the difference between modern 40k and the golden age of humanity in the world of the 41st millennia.
Why does he try to justify stuff that can't happen by lore with arguments that have nothing to do with the lore?
Oh, but Pio, you have to understand. They make sense because the Emperor wanted female friends. Have you not seen his collection of fedoras in the Imperial Palace? The Emperor wasn't a galaxy-level conqueror that focused on reuniting and strengthening humanity. He was just a redditor in a golden chair. And even then, bullshit on the claim that they were aware of the wider situation in the galaxy. During the Age of Apostasy, they were, by lore, so isolated they didn't know a civil war had started until 4 chapters of Space Marines were fighting the forces of the Ministorum directly on Terra. And even then, they had to be briefed by their chapter masters to even know what the fuck was happening and do something. He then tries to make an argument that the Custodians should kill the Emperor and just take over the Imperium. I don't know why, it comes out of nowhere.
it would honestly make a lot more sense, not just women custodies, but it would make a lot more sense if the custodies rebelled and took over the Imperium of Mankind. They totally could. 10,000 custodies could rule the Imperium. I guess the reason they don't is I guess Big E tells them not to, but honestly, they'd probably be pretty good rulers. Like, in my personal headcanon of what the Emperor's actual plan was, if you've read the Horus Heresy novels, it's pretty unclear, but I do think that the creation of the Primarchs and the Space Marine chapters, or Space Marine legions, was to conquer the galaxy while the Emperor created the Webway portal. And then once he had completed the Webway, and faster than light travel was not only convenient but instantaneous, I do think he planned on using his custodies to murder all of the Primarchs and Space Marines and then just rule the Imperium by themselves.
He then goes on to say that people are angry about the retcon of female custodians because they are just looking for something to be angry about, and they are happy of it.
People are mad about women custodies, and it kind of makes me wonder. I do think a lot of the outrage is people enjoying themselves, because few things are as fun as complaining. Oh, and when you get a great opportunity to complain, it's so much fun. You get to be angry, you get to, your heart rate gets to go up a little bit. Like, it can be really, really fun to let off steam and to complain.
Oh yeah, I for sure love getting higher blood pressure because an idiot retconned the lore with no tangible explanation, in a way that makes the existence of the Custodians as a faction something that is questionable because of their recruitment practices. He then goes on a minutes-long tirade explaining that maybe some people go too far getting angry about this, and then he tries to justify the existence of this retcon by saying that it is the task of the writer to create stuff for 40k, and we just have to either accept it or reject it.
It should be a dialogue, a conversation of where those lines are, but really, it's the author's role to come up with the thing, and then it's the audience's role to see it and then think whatever we want to think about it.
Completely ignoring the fact that it is still the task of the same fucking writer to make the stuff he writes make sense with the universe at large. Now, for once, I will lay down my arms for a second in appreciation of Eon's rare, extremely rare, honesty about something. Because until now his lore knowledge does not mirror the claims he made about reading all Space Marine codexes and being an expert. But he pretty much admits that the claim that not only female custodians exist, but that they always existent is a blatant lie, which it is.
Now, the reason that there's lady custodies, I do think, is probably a little pandering, because there is a rumor that other authors have wanted to do lady custodies and they've been told no because the model line was all men currently. It would have been more interesting if they were given the yes so that they could write interesting stories, where right now Games Workshop just did it. And hilariously, there's some guy at Games Workshop who's responding to people's comments, and let's come up with a name for this character. Let's call him Sean. So Sean over at Games Workshop, he's responding to people saying, since the first of the 10,000 were created, there have always been female custodians. That's a dirty, stinking lie. That is not true at all.
I hope you appreciate this compliment, because it is probably the only one you will get. As soon after he says that the fact that they exist now is not a problem.
Is it a problem that they're changing it now? No. But that's a dirty, like, JK just kidding Rowling lie. That is not true at all. Is that the opinion of Warhammer? Not really, it's kind of more the opinion of Sean.
When it is not true, and I will explain it with a very simple to understand scheme. Now, the Custodians recruit only from the most genetically pure Terran-born nobles, as I explained in the videos to why the female Custodians can't exist. The main expert and the one that came up with the process to create Custodians was the Emperor of Mankind, and under his supervision for their creation, the Custodians became known as the 10,000s in just 200 years during the Great Crusade. After his entombment, the end of the Horus Heresy, and the end of the war in the Webway, where less than 1,000 Custodians came back alive, it took them 10,000 years to replenish their number back to 10,000. Thing that was confirmed in the first book of Watchers of the Throne, The Emperor's Legion, where the protagonist claims that only recently the Custodians are back on full strength. And this was before the Battle of Lion's Gate, where the Custodians lost 2,000 of their numbers in that single defense on Terra. And this happened at the end of M41, keep in mind. Now, to explain why their existence doesn't make sense, you have to keep in mind a few small rules. The creation of Custodians relies mainly, if not only, on the nobles of Terra. Now, Terra is an monopolies, with trillions of people on it. But don't be mistaken by that number. Nobility can't number in the billions on Terra. It is the same comparison that we can make between the real world and the number of billionaires. At the moment of the writing of this script in the world, there is 8.1 billion people. And yet, we have only 3,042 billionaires. It is a very small percentage of the population. So, with an EQ monopolies with at least 1 trillion people on Terra, best case scenario we would be at around 400 or 500,000 nobles by comparison. But we are not talking about wealth, but nobility. Nobility in the case of Terra comes directly from the Terran-born nobles and leaders of the Unification Wars. Their sons were taken to make the first custodians, both as a sign of loyalty to the Emperor, but also as hostages against their own families. Because the threat pretty much was, betray, and I send your own genetically modified super soldier of a son to end you. So, in this case I want to give the benefit of the doubt and say that there could be 200,000 nobles on Terra. This is the highest statistical number I am willing to concede. So, we have an extremely small recruitment pool with the custodies recruiting only from the nobles of Terra. And the children that are born in the nobles of Terra obviously come from an arranged marriage between noble families between men and women. Now, it is renowned when it comes to empires at war, and in general when it comes to conflict both fictional and happening in the real world, that men are more expendable than women as a resource. Because at a parity of numbers, you need just 30% of males left in a community to be able to have genetic diversity while making pregnant every woman in that community. Because men can impregnate multiple women a day, and women can get pregnant only once every 9 months. So this means that shrinking the number of the male Terran-born nobles population, as long as you don't do it to the extreme, changes nothing for the reproduction of the nobles and the recruitment of the custodians. You take just some males from every family in the pool once per generation, and the ones born after from the males that are left will make up for it. Do it with enough strategy, you will still keep the number of nobles born compared to the ones that die during the augmentation process still in the net green. So the nobles' families grow, because again, very many children die when they are being augmented to try and make them into custodians. The process without the Emperor has an almost 100% death ratio. If by calculations only one every year becomes a custodian. But if we follow the claim made on Twitter by Games Workshop, that not only female custodians exist, but that they always existed, you are shrinking the entirety of the recruitment pool by using Terran-born noble women that once they become custodians, after thousands upon thousands of them die, can't give any children to the nobles. Shrinking the number of males with moderation doesn't give any kind of problems to the recruitment pool. Doing it to women inevitably leads you not only in the red, but over a long span of time, leads the nobles and the entirety of the recruitment pool to extinction. And by my calculations, that would happen in around 500 years. So, this retcon actively makes the existence of custodians in general unbelievable. It has been 10,000 years that they have been using both men and women. By M32, the custodians shouldn't have been a thing anymore. And it was the job of the writer to fix this problem in some way. If he couldn't, he shouldn't have made the fucking retcon. Does this show you that their existence is a big problem? Hope so. Tangent over, let's go back to the video. And then he shows probably one of the worst mindsets to have. I kid you not. He says that a good reason to have female custodians in the setting is to set up romances between custodians.
But if two custodians were in love, that could be a really interesting way to have custodians do something wrong for a very understandable reason. So I do think it could lead to some really interesting storytelling. But yeah, it is hilarious the way Games Workshop is going about it, where they're like, "Nuh-uh, we always planned this. Always. It was always supposed to be this way. It wasn't."
Now, removing that this will be heresy on any level. The Emperor didn't want superhumans reproducing. But is it just me, or does this sound extremely sexist? He then has the courage to call the people outraged at a politically motivated change that arrived in their own hobby just by activists complaining about inclusivity a loud minority, when the loud minority was the people that wanted this stupid as fuck retcon.
And the way people are handling it. Mostly, nobody cares. But there's definitely a vocal minority of people losing their mind who are like, I'm done with Warhammer 40K, let's boycott the company, let's burn it all to the ground, hashtag not my Warhammer. I don't think this change actually changes anything.
And after endless minutes spent trying to justify this change saying that it doesn't matter, after I just showed you that it invalidates the custodians as a faction at large, and trying to use the old retcons made to factions with almost no lore established as a good comparison for a change made to a faction that by this point was established for almost a decade, with a bunch of lore written in stone, he then lies about the Warhammer is for everyone announcement, say that it was done because of the Spanish guy that showed up in the World War II German symbol, and signed himself as the Austrian painter at a 40k tournament, and won, because all other participants, weak as they were, refused to play him.
It kind of reminds me of back in the day when Games Workshop did their famous Warhammer is for everyone post, which was a little pandery, but I appreciated the sentiment because it did come right after that event where some jerk went to a convention wearing like an outfit that made everyone uncomfortable, and so everybody decided not to play him. And so Warhammer published a little article. One of the great powers of our hobby is its ability to bring people together in common cause, to build bonds and friendships that cross divides. We believe in and support a community united by shared value of mutual kindness and respect. Our fantasy settings are grim and dark, but that is not a reflection of who we are or how we feel the real world should be. We will never accept nor condone any form of prejudice, hatred, or abuse in our company or the Warhammer hobby. We will continue to diversify the cast of characters we portray through miniatures, art, and storytelling so everyone can find the representation and heroes they can relate to. And if you feel the same way, whether and whoever you are, we're glad you are a part of the Warhammer community. If not, you will not be missed. It's just basically saying don't be a jerk. It's kind of really what that whole post boils down to, in very flowery language.
While that announcement was made in 2020 during the George Floyd riots, and everyone was angry about it because Games Workshop is a UK-based company, why the fuck would they release this statement during that period of unrest in the US if not for pandering and showing support to the woke movement that was burning down cities? So, more lies in a single video. So, the torture we inflicted on ourselves with EonsOfBattle is over. Mine and Pio's judgment on this guy, his models look extremely good. This guy can paint. If you want to learn how to paint, watch him. But when it comes to the lore he so much speaks about, for that, I will let my precise thoughts be expressed by Dark Viper AU.
What is wrong with you? Shut the fuck up!
Now we move to Majorkill. My opinion on Majorkill when it comes to the lore has not changed. He's not even a clown, he's the entire fucking circus. Keep in mind, I despise Majorkill personally, not only as a lore YouTuber. The guy has backstabbed Arch Warhammer. Now, your opinion on Arch might be good or bad. It really doesn't matter in this case. Much of the success of Majorkill is owed to Arch Warhammer. Backstabbing the guy that made you famous makes you a very shitty person to begin with. He then did the same to Weshammer, accusing him of copying his content and videos, in a very stupid way because both of them talk about the same exact lore owned by Games Workshop. What should Weshammer talk about to not copy other lore YouTubers? Majorkill got so much backlash because of that he had to delete the video, because even his own community was calling him out. The constant shilling of porn on his Patreon and even the recent shilling of peptides to his audience of children doesn't make me like him either.
And you want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place.
And obviously the porn shilling. Thank you, Majorkill. Obviously, the porn shilling couldn't be missed. It is a very shitty thing to do when you make videos that are open to be watched by children. We make jokes about it at best, but we will never dare to sponsor 18+ content on videos watched by children, Majorkill. Humor side, his entire humor is based on being the most stereotypical Australian you can think. It would be like me and Pio basing our entire brand of humor on being Italian Americans. Pio, you missed the ball! We have to make a new video!
Danny, you gabagool! I'm busy taking over Brazil! Forget about the new video!
To put it simply, he's not fucking funny. If anything, all the videos we have watched of him for Lore Destroyers, other than being grossly inaccurate on the lore, have in more than one occasion made us uncomfortable, because of too sexual jokes, or even jokes about diseases. So, the guy is a serial backstabber, that has backstabbed 2 of his own friends without remorse. He's not funny, if anything he's the worst kind of comedian, an unfunny one. But what about his lore? His lore is a fucking joke. We have watched at least a dozen of his videos for Lore Destroyers, and some had from small to giant mistakes in them. Removing that we watched his lore battle against Weshammer hosted by Baldemort. Only critique to Baldemort we made for the video is that the questions were a bit badly structured. And removing the amount of compliments and praises he did to Weshammer, this before the backstabbing, really go and watch it knowing that he will call out Weshammer as copying his content not long after. But I have the suspicion that for the entirety of the video, he was cheating the answers to the lore questions that were being asked. He kept looking every time the camera was on him in the same exact spot, as if he was reading the answers because Voldemort was on speaker. We have no guarantee that Majorkill was alone, so it is my suspicion that in that video he was cheating during a lore contest, a guy that considers himself a lore expert. Do you want to see how much this guy sucks at the lore? Because I have the perfect example, and it is once again a video about the female custodians retcon. The video is called Female Custodians are now 100% canon. What does this mean for Warhammer 40k? He specifically goes over, during the video, the story of the first of the 3 custodians mentioned in the codex, Calla dei Starovalia Cash. Now, me and Pio read all the female custodians lore for a Lore Destroyers video. We laughed our asses off for how stupid it was, but still, looking for proof, Lore Destroyers episode 6. The story of Starovalia Cash is literally 2 pages long. Majorkill, in his explanation, gets the ending of it completely fucking wrong. It is bewildering that for a 20 minutes video, a lore YouTuber didn't bother to read the 2 fucking pages of lore.
However, a squad of custodians teleported on board her ship and captured her, ending her blood game. It turns out that one of the crew members was nervous about the female custodian's plan and seemingly betrayal, so alerted the Imperial Palace. In turn, Kesh ordered the man to be turned into a servitor and the entire crew to be punished. She wanted a crew that trusted her completely and committed to her orders without hesitation, no matter what they were.
No, wait. You are showing the lore on screen. Did he just fucking fuck up retelling the lore that is on screen? Let's see.
He had it in front of him.
Yeah, let me hear what he said.
Board her ship and captured her, ending her blood game. It turns out that one of the crew members was nervous about the female custodian's plan and seemingly betrayal, so alerted the Imperial Palace. In turn, Kesh ordered the man to be turned into a servitor and the entire crew to be punished. She wanted a crew that trusted her completely and committed to her orders without hesitation.
That's literally that's literally the opposite of the story. He's literally saying the opposite of the story. Like, I can understand it is shitty lore, but it is 2 fucking pages, Majorkill. Like, you have them here. You are showing them. What the fuck? Like...
Yeah, the captain got servitorized, not the one that betrayed.
The captain got servitorized, the entire crew got punished and then was allowed to go back into service, which punished in this case, like, would have been, like, probably being tortured alive. But the woman that actually denounced there to the custodians and the Imperial Palace was promoted to be the captain. He literally said the opposite, because she wanted a crew that followed her orders, like, blindly. Even at the end, she says that the fact that they were following her orders blindly was what made them get punished. And she actually gave a reward to the one that didn't, just for reference. Fucking Christ. Majorkill, I can understand that you have, like, no kind of fucking commitment to the lore with 700k subscribers. You can say whatever the fuck you want, and people will believe you, because rule of numbers. But for real, you couldn't be bothered to read the 2 fucking pages. We are at that level now. Giulio, do the honors. Show the true lore to the viewers and Majorkill.
Officer of Vox, Iwa Batur, make yourself known, he commanded. Unable to stop her treacherous body from shaking, jaw clenched tight, the officer with the ocular teether rose to her feet and gave an Aquila salute. Officer Batur here believed it appropriate to ignore your request for absolute secrecy. She dispatched a coded distress call amidst her standard data missives and we detected it. Shipmaster Lethwick choked in outrage. But before he could berate his rebellious officer, the shield captain pointed a finger at the man, menacing him to silence. There are those who will call such disobedience to a custodian heresy, said Cash slowly. And yet in this instance, unthinking capitulation risked infinitely greater evil. Recommendations? Asked Nicodemus. This crew has been found wanting, replied Cash. A sword that turns willingly upon its master offers no protection. But examples can be instructive. We shall hand the shipmaster over to the Adeptus Mechanicus. Let them make a servitor of him, if he wishes to serve so unthinkingly. Excoriation for the crew. Then let them return with punitive status to their battle fleet, that they might spread the word of vigilance. As for Officer Batur, one hopes that she will captain this vessel in the future with the same courage and clarity of faith she has shown this day. This defense of the Golden Throne requires no less.
So, we have an unfunny and generally completely morally bankrupt person trying to be a lore YouTuber, while making minor and major mistakes in every single video of lore he ever made, and trust me, we watch him constantly for lore destroyers. Some of his edits even ended up in the last video we released, which was a best-of of the first 4 episodes of lore destroyers. Trying to be a lore YouTuber and expert while not even bothering to read 2 pages of shitty lore, that even we, that can't stand it, took the time to read just to be sure to be precise when we demolished it. Why the fuck are people even following this guy? This one is another technically not lore YouTuber, but that tends to speak and lie a bit too much about the lore for my taste, and it is none other than Goobertown Hobbies. And before we get into the single video we were sent of him, there is a little trivia story to tell. Goobertown Hobbies was already featured on our channel, in the final section of the Female Space Marines video. In fact, we brought up one of his tweets while we were making an entire expose for the motivations of the activists trying to change the hobby. What many people don't know is that he answered under the video. He was the only one to do so, in fact, on the video directly. And to say he ended up being badly burned would be an understatement. Giulio, please read this comment.
Question. Is Goobertown a tourist who doesn't know what they're talking about? Or are they a person who has painted thousands of Warhammer models since the 1990s? It's not possible to be both. On the topic of the video, no girls allowed will always be deeply, deeply stupid. It does make sense for some chapters to be filled with dogmatic no girls allowed types because variety is good. But there is no reason for all of the chapters to be pathetic no girls allowed losers. Swinky face.
Removing that this is an appeal to seniority, because the guy might be painting from 30 plus years, but he showed even in this comment how much he doesn't fucking know about the lore, the chapters don't have a choice on who they recruit. They can recruit only males by established lore. But obviously, I didn't leave this comment alone. I gave it my answer. Oh hey Goobertown, finally one of the people I shame directly shows. Shame it is you because you are one of the least interesting. But when has that stopped me from showing some truth to the people, huh? First, Goobertown, you do not know what you are talking about. It is not even a real question to ask. Just by your taking the tweet, and trust me, far from the only one I've ever been shown from you that is laughable, or even you're taking this comment, you show yourself that you know almost nothing of what you're talking about. Second, it is not stupid. It is established lore on how the production of superhuman soldiers works in the 40k universe. Something you might not like or complain about doesn't make it stupid. It makes you angry to be wrong. And it is not a matter of chapter, as I explained in the video that I'm sure you didn't bother to watch, because why would a 250k YouTuber even show the most basic of respect to another content creator? It is a matter of lore of the universe, genetics of the universe, continuity of the universe, and traditions of the Astartes with the universe. It is not a choice the chapters can or will make. It is how things are in the traditionalist and hyper-conservative military society of the 31st millennium. You say variety is good. I say continuity of established lore is better. Third, yes, you were, are, and with that attitude will always be a tourist. You once again show you know nothing of the lore, so by this point I must believe that you do not care about what you paint, as long as people watch you for it. 40k fan? Nah, you are not something like that. And being a fan from the 1990s and still having this kind of take on 40k, mate, I will say it is laughable if you have been here this long. But undermining the 40k lore to this level, I will call outright pathetic if you are here from 35 years, or even 25. Hope that was helpful. Watch the video next time. Might show you some more lore to complain about in future tweets. Being a tourist is not a matter of how new you are in the hobby, it is a matter of mindset. You could be in the hobby from 30 plus years, like Goobertown, and still be a tourist, because you do not care about the property you follow and aren't really passionate about it. Or you might not be a tourist while being here just 5 minutes, because you do care about what happens to your favorite hobby. Being a newbie and a tourist are two different things. Newbies don't know but are curious to learn and understand. Tourists simply don't care. They're on this bandwagon because it is popular, and once it stops being popular, they will move to the next. And damned whatever happens to the property of 40k. It is really that simple of a distinction. But this, obviously, is not the end. We watched, once again, a video we were sent for Lord Destroyers of Goobertown. And I will just say, as I approve proved more than once by this point. I can stand liars or fools. The video Goobertown we watched was once again on the female custodies. In fact, it is named Female Custodies and the Mental Health Benefits of Painting Miniatures.
Our patrons have a very advanced sense of humor. They keep sending us shit to watch.
Obviously, in the beginning of the video we already have problems. He claims that the Custodians are a very mysterious faction.
Alright, so at the time of recording, people have been excited about a lore update for the Adeptus Custodes from Warhammer 40K. They went from being a mysterious and presumably all-male faction of Super Soldier Guardians to a mysterious and explicitly co-ed faction of Super Soldier Guardians.
A faction so mysterious they now got 3 codexes in a row for the last 3 editions that explain all their lore in detail. So yeah, not very mysterious for a mysterious faction. After a very long part of the video that seems more like a yoga training session than a painting tutorial, mind you, I appreciate what he says to some extent, as painting indeed does relax you when it comes to minis. Unless you are painting eyes, in that case it becomes a bit like being part of the bomb squad. But after around 10 minutes of the video he claims that nerds on the internet are angry that the gender barrier of the Custodes was broken by including women.
Now every video is also a time capsule. It's a product of the era in which it was made. If you're watching this in 2030 and you're trying to understand the comments section, well, here's some context. At this moment in pop culture history, nerds on the internet are upset about the gender barrier being broken for the Custodes, one of the 20 different armies in Warhammer 40K. Ain't never been no girls allowed, and ain't never gonna be no girls allowed.
Yes, people were angry about that, but because it is a politically motivated and unjustified retcon made literally for no one. Removing my argument of how extremely impossible with this retcon the existence canonically of the Custodians becomes. My main complaint about it is that we are ignoring great female factions and female characters just to give more attention to a feminized version of an only male faction. I want more lore on the Sisters of Silence. Fuck female Custodians. Give me books on the Silent Sisterhood. I find it more sexist to accept this as something good than critiquing it. Because you're pretty much accepting that the only way to make women interesting is by gender-bending men. If that is not sexist, I don't know what it is. And here then we see with this claim how much this guy cares about the lore. The 30+ years old veteran tourist.
Some folks say that they're upset that the retcon was sloppy, and I do kind of agree with that. The lore update should have been paired with new models. I think that would have worked a whole lot better. Of course, by the time you watch this video, internet nerd rage may have shifted to something else. There's a whole industry of rage-bait YouTube channels aimed at nerds, and they always need fuel for the fire.
You can understand when someone understands a lot of the lore because they discount it for the models. He then goes on a tirade about internet getting angry at everything that people with original IPs change of the original IPs. Pretty much ignoring that people were angry because the change was pure tokenization. There was no reason to do it, but it was done all the same. Because of the message, where they keep butchering source material just for internet brownie points.
A diverse crew in Star Trek? Rage. Black Little Mermaid? Rage. Dark-skinned Aragorn on a Magic the Gathering card? Rage. Black Dwarven Princess and a Black Hobbit in the same show? Rage. Princess Peach wearing pants for one scene of the Mario movie? Rage. Brie Larson and Daisy Ridley still exist? Rage, rage, rage. It's predictable and miserable and buffoonish.
He then has the balls to claim that the rage people have for unjustified and lore-shattering retcons that are happening everywhere, not only in 40k, don't understand the source material of 40k.
At the time of this recording, one of the armies in Warhammer 40k has gone co-ed, so the usual suspects have fired up their webcams. I find this brand of nerd rage to be tragic for a lot of reasons, one of which is that there's so little understanding for what the source material is all about. Of course Star Trek has a diverse cast. It's Star Trek. Humans have solved our problems and we're heading out into the galaxy to learn about new cultures. Lord of the Rings is all about inner strength, plus the power of friendship. Outward appearances don't matter, and that's the whole point. Even the smallest person can change the course of the future. And Gimli becomes friends with Legolas, and he stops being such a horrible racist. And Star Wars. This is the big one. Luke Skywalker's entire journey is about learning emotional maturity. It's not an easy journey. It takes 3 full movies and he stumbles along the way, but he gets there. Luke becomes a Jedi by confronting his fears while resisting the temptations of anger and hatred. The dark side is seductive, and once you start down that path, it consumes you. Rage bait videos for nerds prey on the worst parts of human nature. They're fueled by grievance and hatred. This is literally the dark side of the Force, and living like a Sith is not healthy. Anakin became miserable and friendless. Anakin was more of an angry little boy at the end of Episode 3 than he ever was in Episode 1.
What was that Red Letter Media said?
How does it feel to have lived long enough to see all of your favorite franchises go down in flames?
Feels great.
At the end of the video then, he has the goal to call out all the people getting angry at lore being ruined for no reason at all as clowns.
You could play some video games. Some games are relaxing, and others are a good form of mental exercise. Other games are going to spike your adrenaline and make it harder to get to sleep. Another way to use your free time is to watch some angry clowns rant on the internet. That's fun and all, but if you're not careful, you'll end up taking on their burden. Through osmosis, their childish grievances may become your own, and you'll end your day with more worries than you started with.
Because the message of this entire video is, why getting angry? It doesn't matter. If it didn't matter, why the fuck did they do it, Goobertown? They could have chosen to not do it, not ruin the lore of the Custodians, not ruin my favorite faction ever for brownie points. But why do I even bother? This guy will never watch this entire video, let alone his own section of it. So I will be as direct and blunt as possible. Goobertown, to see through the false facade of peace and quiet you use in the videos, someone just needs to go to your Twitter and see what you post. You are not fooling anyone. This retcon for you doesn't change anything because it agrees with your own politics. Stick to the fucking painting and leave to the experts that talks about the lore. They don't change anything at the end of the day. I care about my hobby and its lore, and I will call out shitty retcons for what they are. I did it with the Primaris, I did it with the Custodians, I did it for the possible retcon of female Marines. I did it in this video for all the retcons of the Grey Knights, and I will keep doing it. Because I am not a consumer. I care about my hobby. You care about minis. So stop talking about the lore you don't know, and kindly shut the fuck up. And now we move to an old nemesis of mine, Templin Institute.
Oh no.
How are you doing, old friends? Thought you had escaped me years ago? Does the name Danny Fortuna tell you anything? Time for a reckoning. I will not spend much time on Templin, because really there is no need to do so. The guy is a clown and a coward in the best of days. We have watched 2 videos of his for Lord Destroyers, but as many people know, I have a past with Templin Institute from the time it announced on Twitter that it was producing the now infamous Female Space Marines video.
What about the Templin Institute?
I have passed with the Templin Institute, and what I can say is that the channel itself is just a repeat of the wiki of 40k, with all mistakes of the wiki left in it, to the levels of One Mind Syndicate, and especially the owner and host is a full-blown hypocrite. In his video about how female marines are possible, he says himself, as a lore channel, that lore doesn't matter, other than his full-blown arrogance in the video itself, where he calls whoever doesn't agree with him mindless automatons and bigots, while in the same breath asking for the debate to remain civil. The other channels I don't like personally because they get the lore wrong. I don't like Templin personally because he is at the same time as arrogant as he is a coward. As he backed down from his own challenge that he launched on Twitter about how he will destroy anybody that disagree with him about the fact that female Astartes can exist using lore, and when I myself, more than a year before this channel was created, stepped up to the challenge, he immediately backed out, because he didn't like the terms of the challenge itself, and then excused it with, I won't give a platform to a complete nobody.
You really dislike him more than other people.
Templin Institute is literally a channel of wiki reading with above average levels of editing. We watched this video on the Emperor of Mankind, and it was honestly laughable. It was literally little more than the information contained on the wiki repeated in the video itself. We made true research into the Emperor of Mankind. You can watch our video on it to know what true research into a topic looks like. The video even failed to acknowledge the place of birth of the Emperor, ancient Anatolia, which is the current day territory of Turkey. In fact, that clip even ended in the Lord Destroyer's best-of released before this video.
According to ancient texts, the being that would become the Emperor was born some 50,000 years ago, in a long-forgotten region of Terra.
Turkey. It's not forgotten. It's forgotten in 40k, maybe. But...
Long forgot.
I'm sorry, Turkish fans. Turkey didn't survive in 40k.
We forgot about you.
And let's not even speak of his video on female space marines. The entire video is literally, if we ignore everything that says I am wrong, I am actually correct. He spends the video lying about the lore, because it is filled up with lies. Making up scenarios that were never real, like the Emperor in the progressive time of the Great Crusade making female space marines.
Today, if any still remain within the chapters, they are a rarity. Furthermore,
they're a rarity. Tell me one. They're a fucking... Tell me one. A name. I want a name. Okay, a rarity. Explain to me where the fuck did you see a female marine? Where?
They are a very extreme rarity. We didn't see one.
They are a very extreme
like
rarity. Do you see this marine in this random artwork with his helmet on? Yeah, this is one is female. The Great Crusade was anything but progressive. The Emperor was moving a galaxy-wide war against anything non-human. He couldn't give less of a fuck about progressivism. He also spends the entirety of the video insulting anybody that doesn't agree with his view, in fact.
So if you read the aforementioned quote and decided to accept it at face value, good for you. The Imperium is always in need of easily persuaded, uncritical souls to work as leech harvesters and mind thralls. But if you think the idea of female space marines just being a possibility, according to one interpretation, is some kind of betrayal, if this discussion has caused you to decide that the woke moralists over at the Templin Institute have finally gone too far, if even now you are furiously hitting the unsubscribe button, well, the tree of any YouTube channel must from time to time be nourished by the blood of misogynists, and as the saying goes, you will not be missed.
He even, as a lore expert, claims that maybe what deleted the female space marines from the history of the Imperium of Men was an ignorant decree of the Ministorum.
But at some point during the history of the Imperium, possibly because of complications with implanting gene seed, but more likely because of some ignorant proclamation by the Ecclesiarchy or another imperial institution, the idea of recruiting female space marines fell out of favor.
The Imperial Church, which is renowned to every single even medium-level lore knower of 40k, has a fully fucking female army in the Sisters of Battle, but no, it is the Church, it must be sexist, so they were the ones that deleted them. And by the end of it, even with this, he has the courage to say, after having lied for an entire video on everything, after having made only comparisons that are nonsensical and outright stupid, after having shown that he considers himself smarter than 99% of the people in the hobby, if not 100%, because seeing the video, I think he is that arrogant, he arrives at the end, after spending the entire video saying that the lore doesn't matter and should be changed to be more inclusive, just to make happy the gene stealers that are always offended about fucking everything, calling everyone that doesn't agree with him a misogynist.
If even now you are furiously hitting the unsubscribe button, well, the tree of any YouTube channel must from time to time be nourished by the blood of misogynists, and as the saying goes, you will not be missed.
Yeah, that episode gave me an headache out of stupidity.
You are better off learning the lore out of the official wiki, not from this arrogant clown. And now we move to Bricky. I couldn't have worse of an opinion on Bricky as a lore content creator as he stands now. He is literally a Games Workshop shill and a yes man. Do you guys know that he made a video on the retcon of the female custodians? And then hid it, and it is currently viewable only if you have the link to it, because he made it unlisted. The link to it is still easily foundable on Reddit. Just look for the golden opinion. Funnily enough, I have nothing to say about this video, because he said the same exact stupid things that everyone else said. Why being angry? They changed nothing. Even if I show to you that they destroyed the faction from the beginning of the lore. That the lore of the Custodes included in the 10th edition with the retcon was actually pretty cool. When every single true lore master on the internet clocked that all of it didn't make any sense.
Sometimes, Adric and that kind of thing. I don't actually bring this up with anyone. I never actually talk about Warhammer outside of this whole thing because, well, unless asked to, there's such a nasty vocal minority in that community that kind of calling myself a fan of it naturally brings in ire.
The minority you don't care about?
I'm very curious of this vocal minority. Let's hear about it, because recently the vocal minority has caused pretty much every single big production and product that has tried to not appeal to it in every way possible to crush and burn. But let's hear it.
From other folks. It's so embarrassing right now. It is genuinely embarrassing to be a fan of Warhammer and looking on.
It is genuinely embarrassing to be a fan of Warhammer. Why the fuck do you talk about it? Go away. Who the fuck needs you, Bricky? to hear the shitty jokes of Adeptus Ridiculous? Who the fuck needs you, literally? There are people that break their asses off researching lore. For the next fucking video, I am reading an entire trilogy of Eisenhorn just for a single minor character for the first 2 books, which is Pontius Glow. I watched your fucking video with LumLum about the factions of the Imperium of Men, and every 5 seconds you said something that was wrong. Even in broad strokes, you said bullshit for the entire duration of the video. You confused the Great Crusade with the Unification Wars. No, the Catan cannot be killed when the Necrons killed the Flayer, like 5 minutes apart. Nobody needs you. If you are ashamed of being a 40k fan, start doing videos on Star Wars. Go the way of the idiot that actually defended the Templin Institute when he made the female Space Marine video. Just do Star Wars, stay away from the serious lore, because you're visibly not even... you don't care about it. So... again, we reacted to all of this video in Lord Destroyers episode 5, so expect an edit soon to land on the channel when we make the second episode of the best of. Bricky is not a lore master. He doesn't even qualify as an expert. When he's not making lore up to make people laugh in Adeptus Ridiculous, that remember, is the only one that openly claims to care about humor more than accuracy, Bricky never did, and openly makes lore videos that are riddled with mistakes, and I have proof of it, proof so heavy that it is 5 hours long. You see, I went under invitation of Lumi Angler, also known as LumLum, on a stream with her, to watch and react to the first part of Bricky's every single Warhammer 40k faction re-explained. It is a 2 hours video that it took us 5 hours to react to. For the simple fact that every 2 phrases, the third was wrong. In this same video, he even claims that the Catan were impossible to slay by everyone during the War in Heaven, just to contradict himself a bit later when he talks about how the Necrons killed the Catan Landugor, also known as the Flayer. This video is just general broad strokes on every single faction and pieces of human and non-human history of 40k, and it is filled with mistakes, missing context, and outright wrong information. Again, want proof? The stream is there, in the description. Click the link and go and watch. You can't be an expert if you are explaining the universe in broad strokes, and even then you get stuff wrong. And you can tell me it is impossible to make a video this long and still keep all info in check and correct. His part 1 is 1 hour and 56 minutes long. Our longest video is Badab War Part 3, and it is a minute shy of 2 hours. And it is 100% correct beginning to end. Even if we count both parts of the videos of Bricky, our Badab War series is over 6 hours long, and in those 6 hours, the only mistakes were typos in a couple of names. Bricky might be a 40k YouTuber, but he's very far from a lore YouTuber. That title is given too lightly in this day and age. Lore YouTubers take the lore seriously. They don't use it to farm clout and then ignore an entire retcon and fail to spot shitty lore inside that same retcon just because it agrees once again with their own shitty ideology. Once again, you are better off reading the wikis. At least they won't confuse the Unification Wars with the Great Crusade, which is a thing he did in part 1. And with this, once again, we come to the final YouTuber included in this list. And to be honest, I don't feel well with having him here. I am talking of none other than Luetin09. Now, for those that don't know, Luetin is pretty much my indirect mentor when it comes to 40k. I learned the part of the English I speak today through his lore videos. This was very much long ago, when I was still learning about 40k. He's not here for mistakes when it comes to the lore. I clocked a few in some of his videos before I stopped watching other YouTubers, not out of arrogance, mind you. I just get tired of 40k all the time after working on our videos, but they were negligible. Typos, some confused info, a wrong date here and there. He's an expert. On him I can say it openly. But unfortunately, expert or not, smart or not, correct or not, nobody's 100% immune from having dumb opinions.
What kind of dumb opinions?
You see, Luetin in April 2020, which was still the period where I was watching him, released a video called Canon and Retcon are not a thing in 40k. Pretty much the entire video is spent on saying that the lore has and will change often, that there is no confirmed canon, that canon by itself doesn't exist in 40k, but I hope that I don't need to specify how dumb of an opinion this is when it comes to a universe following a prescribed narrative. And that has spent more than a decade building up series of books like the Horus Heresy. You want to tell me that you, a lore channel, believe that a universe that follows a canon for various events that have happened in the past and that will happen in the future has no canon, Luetin? Then I must ask 2 questions. One, you guys already know. If there is no canon, what the fuck are the books of 40k about? Is this official material or just overpriced fanfiction by this point? Do I need to read this to be a 40k lore expert, or they are just useless stuff and I can make up in my mind what I want and say that it is canon because 40k has zero canon? But more importantly, Luetin, explain to me, if there is no canon, what the fuck is all this? You are telling me that you, a lore YouTuber, somebody that I was fond of and that was my initiation to the universe, has spent so much time researching, narrating, editing and publishing these many lore videos without even believing what you yourself were saying in them? How should I take them seriously, knowing that you think that there is no canon? And yet you make videos following the canon lore of 40k.
This is fucking tragic. Look at yourself.
And if this was the only problem, I could just discount it as the stupid opinion held by an expert. But in episode 14 of Lore Destroyers, we watched his latest video about the Terminus Decree retcon in the lore. I am not joking with you. The entire video is an over an hour long cope session to try and justify lore that makes no sense. Luetin knows of Basilio Foe and the Terminus Sanction. He says so himself in this video. And yet at one point, he even tried to justify this retcon with the unreliable narrator excuse for a codex. Codexes don't have in-universe narrators. Trust me, I know. I study them religiously for all of our videos. And in this same video, Luetin shows that even this idea is wrong by itself. His claim is that this new lore, retcon as I call it, because Luetin refused for the entire video to admit that it is indeed a stupid retcon made by people that don't know the lore but feign being lore writers, can be explained as just an administratum clerk misinterpreting what the Terminus Decree is.
And the more we dive into it, the more strange it becomes, because even if it was intended as some kind of misdirect, as can happen in 40k, some Imperial adept made a vast misinterpretation of whatever avatar you want to use as an unreliable narrator, we return to that question of, well, should that be happening in a codex? I mean, I feel like probably not, but on the other hand, I guess it's kind of established for the longest time that codex books can do that. I think my first rebuttal to that point, though, would be sure, but in the past there was a lot more focus on a codex being like a delivery system for lore.
That is 100% impossible. The Terminus Decree is a secret order given to the Grey Knights to be kept in custody in case the Imperium was ever on the point of falling and being destroyed. It is pretty much a secret last resort. This secret last resort is not known in the general Imperium of Men, let alone in the Administratum. In fact, canonically, before the stupid retcon, nobody knew what was written on it. Because the only person that knows that it exists and knows how to access it, and that can call for the Terminus Decree order to be put into effect, is Kaldor Drago, the current Supreme Grandmaster of the Grey Knights. But pay attention, he knows it exists. Not even he knows what the fuck is written on it. So, how in the hell did an administratum clerk misinterpret something that nobody knows exists? And if they know it exists, don't know what's written on it? Luetin, I am sorry to say it, mate, but this opinion alone puts into doubt the entirety of your repertoire of videos. Because if you don't believe that there is canon lore, timeline, and series of events to follow, think about it. Why should I trust anything you say? Right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It creates a doubt that you might not be telling the full story, because you don't believe in canon. Thing that is reinforced by your claim in the video about canon, that people critique you because they don't find you impartial.
It's always interesting on YouTube how you as a producer can put together a video, but never quite imagine the reaction that it will get. My Tau video turned out to be one which was unusually triggering for many. Generally, this was because I presented it from an Imperial perspective, one that painted the Tau in a more negative light than their hopeful, forward-looking perspectives, from their perspective. The reason I did this is because, generally speaking, the lore of 40k is presented from an Imperial perspective. It's not about bias, it's just how it is. Also, and I would fully admit that I did a bad job of illustrating this, it is an ongoing joke with me that I hate the Tau passionately, and I thought that perhaps my tone and just general disposition would be enough to convey that message, but I was very clearly wrong. Anyway, my point is, I would hope that by now people understand I don't have an inherent overarching bias in 40k. I mean, for one, I own like 4 different armies, okay? 2 are Imperium, and to just save answering the comments, the armies are Ultras, Eldar, Sisters, and Chaos. I'm hopeful that people can see I don't have an explicit bias, mainly from the fact in the past few years I have repeatedly noted how the Emperor is, to put it bluntly, a bit of a dick. I will also juxtapose this with other instances where I present the Emperor as being the godly, all-powerful saviour of mankind. So, look, I really feel it should be clear by now, but that's of course never how things go. I mean, we can always say it's impossible to be truly impartial, and I would say, of course, that is true.
It is not this hard to be impartial. Our Bad War series has been praised more than once because it shows the good and the bad of both sides of the war. It isn't just Imperium good, Euron bad, Euron heretic. We spoke of all the injustices that the Astral Claws and the Warders suffered. Many people commented that they didn't know of all the crimes some of the loyalist chapters inflicted against the Warders of the Maelstrom. You just need to say the whole truth. It is not your prerogative to give an interpretation to canon and clear lore. We are lore YouTubers. Our duty is to explain the lore as clearly and unbiasedly as possible. We are not here to give our opinions and masquerade them as canon. We can make theories. I myself did so. Fuck, my theory on the Ghost Razors of Euron being the reason he fell to chaos made Reddit go crazy for a few months. But still, my duty, and by definition your duty, is lore first, theories second, opinions third. That is it. Viewers, do you want to know why in every single lore video we ever made we leave the sources we used in the description? There is two answers to that. Firstly, you can check the lore we explain in the video with your own eyes, read the source material, and learn the stuff we didn't say in the video because it was not relevant to the argument we chose to talk about. Pretty much to learn the whole story by yourself. And secondly, because if we are wrong, we want people to have the means to prove we are wrong. You think one of our theories is wrong? Read the sources, tell us why. You find a mistake? Read the sources, tell us where. Lore YouTubers aren't infallible, but they must strive to be at all times. And a critique I will move to Luetin09, but especially to all the others mentioned in this video, is that they are guilty of creating a culture of toxic positivity for 40k. All of them refuse to acknowledge retcons. All of them refuse to acknowledge shitty lore. All of them refuse to call out Games Workshop for the dip in quality that the lore had after the addition of the Primaris. Why? We all love the same thing. We must show that we have standards. We are not slop consumers. We need to call out Games Workshop, a multi-billion-dollar company, and their highly paid expert writers for writing utter bullshit more often than not. Games Workshop has ditched any kind of quality control at this point. The lore is going actively to hell, and the biggest names of the 40k lore community refuse to acknowledge it.
That's very bad behavior.
It is not only bad, it shows weakness to not even say out loud when someone is actively wrong. And this brings me to the final argument I want to talk about in this video, which is that the majority of these YouTubers fail to see the Imperium as a necessary evil for the survival of humanity. In fact, they see the Imperium of Men either as evil as the others, which they aren't, or in the case of some of them, like EonsOfBattle, worse than the others in the setting. Now, I explained in detail what made humans what they are now in my video The Imperium are the good guys of 40k. It is an hour-long video and it is considered one of the best introduction to 40k from the point of view of humanity. This comes from the comments under the video, not from me. But because there are still people that don't understand the context of existence of humanity in 40k, I have decided, for the sake of the so beloved media literacy crowd, to use an example to explain the concept of grey morality and necessary evil that might be a bit easier to understand. In fact, we will go in comic book territory. We will talk of my favorite DC anti-hero of all time. We will talk of Red Hood. Or maybe you know him with another name.
You really have no idea, do you, Bruce?
Jason, but you're dead.
Let's not fall out here, Bats. I might have told you a teeny tiny little lie. But come on, look at the boy. You did good. We did good. You should be proud.
Now, before delving into the story of Jason Todd, also known as Robin and then Red Hood, we will need to make a little distinction between the Jason Todd presented in the Arkham Knight video game and the Jason Todd of the comic books. Because they not only have different histories, but they also have different motivations. In fact, technically the Jason Todd of the video game is not the canon version. In the comic books, Jason didn't survive his imprisonment by Joker. He was killed, 100% dead. He was later brought back using the Lazarus Pit and came back to life, and adopted the identity of Red Hood, to have his vengeance on both Joker and also Batman. But his vengeance against Batman differs between the video game and the comic books. In the video game, Jason wants to kill Batman because he failed to save him from the clutches of Joker. Keep in mind that Joker in this game is dead. What we see through the game is an hallucination by Bruce.
What's the matter? Lost for words? I expected more. I'm hurt.
Joker sent me the film. I saw him kill you.
Don't you dare lie to me! How long did you wait before replacing me, huh?
A month? A week? I trusted you! And you just left me to die!
That's not what happened.
You always told me, Bruce. Focus on what I want to achieve, and it'll happen. You wanna know what I want now, Mom? I want you dead.
You can't hide from me! I will hunt you down!
But in the original story and in the comic books, Jason was not angry at Bruce for failing to save him. He was angry that he didn't kill the Joker after the Joker killed him.
Is that what you think this is about? That you let me die? I don't know what clouds your judgment worse. Your guilt or your antiquated sense of morality. Bruce, I forgive you for not saving me. But why? Why on God's earth? Is he still alive?
Jason wants vengeance against the Joker for what he did, and he wants Batman to acknowledge that his code of morality is not only wrong, but it is actively ending more lives than if he just dealt with the Joker once and for all.
Ignoring what he's done in the past. Blindly, stupidly disregarding the entire graveyards he's filled, the thousands who have suffered, the friends he's crippled. You know, I thought I'd be the last person you'd ever let him hurt. If it had been you that he'd beat to a bloody pulp, if he had taken you from this world, I would have done nothing but search the planet for this pathetic pile of evil death-worshipping garbage. And send him off to hell!
Jason is a grey morality character that is so well written that the writers of his comic books need to go out of their way to not make you agree with him. Because when you think about it, he is right. The code of morality of Bruce Wayne is not only actively not working, as he keeps arresting the Joker, sending him in prison, only for him to escape and kill more people, but that it has turned from a code of morality to active stupidity. This guy has killed thousands, maimed even more, he has paralyzed Batgirl, also known as Barbara Gordon, also known now as Oracle, the main helper of Batman from her own base. And you want to know how this all ends in some of the DC timelines? With Batman acknowledging that the blood of all the people Joker killed is also on his own hands.
No more. All the people I murdered, I let you live.
I never kept count.
I did.
I know. And I love you for it.
Is my explanation in this moment making you question which moral choice is correct? Is it correct to have the moral high ground of not killing Joker? Or is it wrong because that will just let him kill more, actively turning your own morality against you and innocent people? Is it correct to end his life like a vigilante and turning into a killer yourself? Or is it wrong, and the people he will kill because you spared him will not weigh on your consciousness? Are you asking yourself these questions? Good, because I want to reveal you a little secret.
That's the point!
That is what grey morality is all about. Good and bad people pushed into a corner and being forced to face tough choices. And you want to know how this applies to 40k? Because to put it simply, the Imperium never had a choice in what they became. Again, watch my video on it to see it in extreme details. But humans became what they are out of necessity. Keep in mind that when I wrote my title, I meant good as in the more justified in their own evil. Not good as they are nice. Because the Imperium is not nice. The Imperium must keep a grey morality out of sheer survival. If they share the ideology of Batman that I just showed to you, where their own moral high ground ended up overwriting the desire of humanity to survive in the Milky Way galaxy against all of the enemies it has, humans would already be fucking extinct in 40k. How can the Imperium be satire when before becoming an empire that focuses on the survival of humanity and human supremacy of the stars, they were the only faction that openly offered peace to everyone and coexistence with everyone just to be betrayed and brought to the edge of extinction over and over? What should have humanity in 40k done? Rolled over and died? Was that a preferred outcome than reaching the breaking point and becoming openly hostile to your own enemies? At that point you have to ask yourself a question. Are you really the bad guy of a situation if everything you have to do is done by sheer will to survive? Humans in 40k are not the bad guys. They are as good as the galaxy will ever let them be. That doesn't make them the evil faction. It makes them a faction focusing on survival above everything. Their morality can't reconcile with what we classify as good and evil. Because in the grim darkness of the far future, good and evil are gone. There is surviving and there is dying. To use a quote I read some time ago for the Imperium of Men, people judge us on the decisions we make, but they don't know the options we had. Everyone saying the Imperium is evil has zero understanding of the context in which the Imperium exists, and by definition, doesn't understand the lore. So, fuck off with the opinions of the Imperium being the bad guys, the Imperium being fascists. The Imperium could be nicer if the humans were nicer, and all the bullshit coming from people that don't bother to learn the history of humanity and the galaxy. In a war for survival, the only real sin is losing.